IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast. I guess this is going to become a little bit of a thing for me, Ryan Roberts and Sean Davis, to kind of be here on Mondays for a little bit of time, next couple weeks, because we are in the thick of some very important recruiting visits. And Sean, it's only going to get crazier this weekend because, well, lo and behold, we blink our eyes and it's the blue gold game that's about to happen this weekend. So there's going to be a long list of talented recruits that are going to be on campus. Make sure you go to boards@irishbreakdown.com because we have a running visitor list over there so you know who's coming this weekend. But also, Sean, it was a very important weekend this past weekend, man, because it wasn't like the craziest of lengthy lists as far as recruits visiting wise, but with the Jersey scrimmage that Notre Dame put on, they had several very important couple 2025 kids that were on campus, several 2026 kids that are on campus. So we are going to recap everything, folks. We're going to recap this past weekend. We're going to preview the rest of the week. Some visitors are going to be coming during the stretch this week, leading up to the blue and gold game. We're going to be talking about blue and gold game importance, why it matters, and we're going to get everything kind of moving forward here, man, because it's going to move fast, Sean. It is going to move fast. Before we get into this past weekend and talk about a blunder and some very positive signs from Notre Dame recruiting, Sean Davis, how are you, sir? How are
I'm
you?
wonderful, man. This was a fantastic weekend. Great weather in Chicago. Weekend was family, fun, church. Everything was amazing. You had the Masters if you love golf, UFC. You had a knockout right at the end, which was absolutely amazing. Like the
It was a good
NBA.
weekend, man. It was a good
Yeah, the
weekend for sports.
NBA
Yeah.
still trying to figure out where everybody was going to fit until the seeding yesterday was amazing. Yeah. Being at practice, which God, Brian, it's nothing like good product. Nothing like good product, man. I myself, like Ryan, you stay a little further than I. Yeah. When it comes to making a trek down to South Bend, and most of the guys that cover Notre Dame, they're right there. They drive 15, 20 minutes to the stadium. Guy like me, hour to hour, 15 minutes, man. And sometimes I had to get up 5:30, 5:45 to hit the road because South Bend's an hour ahead. So now I have to make up the time.
To get there, I didn't even think about that. That's funny. I didn't think about
to
that.
do that and make that sacrifice, man. And, we only get 2 full practices.
Yeah.
Right. The rest of the practices are like 5
periods or whatever.
Which is like 40 minutes.
Right.
So, I'm driving longer than I'm watching the team the majority of the time.
Sure.
But when you have a good product to look at, you don't mind. You don't mind. I'll make the trip. When the product we watched 2 years ago, like, yeah.
Was that the Tyler Buckner that one? Yeah,
the Drew Pine, Tyler Buckner quarterback battle.
Yeah, wasn't best. It wasn't the best.
Oh,
wait, wasn't that the one where didn't Tyler Buckner get hurt? Right, and he wasn't able to play in the spring game that year. Wasn't that the one where he turned his ankle on the steps or whatever?
90% of the snaps, and everybody was like, "Oh, yeah." And now we come to a day where people are talking about. Look, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Angeli would start over both of those guys if they were in the quarterback battle.
Oh, talent-wise. Yeah. Well, definitely more talented than Drew Pine. There's no doubt about that.
And we're going to sit here and lament the fact that he might be the 3rd or 4th best quarterback in the room. Count yourselves blessed. That's all I have to say. Count yourselves blessed. It was a fabulous weekend. It really was. It really was.
Sean, it was a great sports weekend, to your point, right? I'm actually, we need to talk some NBA playoffs at some point on this channel because I'm a Sixers fan. That for people that don't know that, Sean, and Sixers have an 8-game winning streak going into the playoffs, man. Since Embiid came back, they're looking pretty solid overall. And I got mad, though. I don't know if you caught that one. Sixers had to win, and then the Magic had to lose to the Bucks, right? And we know what happened there. The Bucks got throttled by the Magic. So the Sixers are still the 7th seed. They have the play-in game now, right? It's just fine. It's just so funny that Doc Rivers ended up hurting the Sixers again indirectly. My gosh, who would have thought? But that's another conversation for another day. We're here to talk recruiting, but it was a great weekend. Absolute great weekend.
I just hope the big guy's healthy. I just really hope the big guy can stay healthy.
He's healthy right now, man. So, I mean, hey, man, you got to – Sean, this is funny. Someone was talking about this on a podcast, and I didn't 100% disagree with it. But so this is the Sixers every year the last few years, right? They would look really good right? And then in the playoffs or like right before, Embiid would break down and he'd be injured and it would pretty much be the end of it, right? You'd just be like, oh, yeah, whatever. You're not going to get out of the second round of the playoffs. The fact that Embiid got hurt early and then got back healthy at the end of the season and ready to go for playoffs, is that a blessing in disguise? I don't know, man. Maybe getting the injury out of the way a little bit early might actually help him. I don't know. I don't know.
It's going to, man, if they can make it in, they end up playing the New York Knicks, that's going to be a fantastic first round series.
Very different teams, right? Very because the Knicks are very guard heavy, and then obviously the Sixers run through the post with Embiid, obviously. So yeah, it's gonna be an interesting series if they're able to beat the Heat on. Is that tonight? Is it Monday night? I think it's Monday night. Right? Oh, Tuesday night. Tuesday night.
I think they're Tuesday. I think they're.
Yeah, I think you are correct. So we'll see what happens. If you guys want to talk about some basketball at some point, throw a super chat, I guess, so we could give you our NBA playoffs tapes if you guys want that one. But we're going to talk recruiting here, Sean, because it was a great weekend from the sports perspective, from the Notre Dame perspective. You being able to get, I still find it so funny that you live an hour and a half away from South Bend, by the way, and you're in a different time zone. I live 10 and a half hours away and I am in the same time zone. That's just in my mind. I'm just like, that's so weird.
That's crazy,
but,
right?
Yeah, it's really strange how time zones work. But we want to talk about recruiting, Sean. And I want to start us out because there was, guys, look, 90% of this last weekend, probably more, was all positive for Notre Dame. Like, let's be very honest about that. Super positive. But I want to get the negative out first, right? Let's get the negative out. And then let's move forward here, right? Let's move forward and let's just, keep chugging forward because Notre Dame still has a chance to solidify a very good 2025 class. They have some good early connections in the 2026 class. So Notre Dame recruiting is in a good spot, right? But let's talk about the negative and then we'll get into all the positive, which is, I think, a good way to take this one, Sean. I want to start with 2025 Frankfort, Kentucky, Western Hills defensive lineman Javion Campbell, 6'5", 265 pounds, basketball player by trade. Okay, basketball player by trade. 1 year of football, 14 and a half sacks as a junior, and he's being courted by some of the big dogs in college football. So from the Georgias, the Alabamas, Ohio States, a long list of great programs have now offered Javion Campbell. Notre Dame was in front of them, though, Sean. It was a couple months ago at this point that Notre Dame was one of the lone major offers on Javion Campbell's list because he's obviously a little bit of a late riser from a recruiting perspective. Well, Sean, Javion was supposed to come this weekend. As it turned out, did not make the trip. Okay. There is a lot to decipher here and a lot that we're not going to get on into on this podcast. This is more for a talking conversation at boards.com. Honestly, there's information that's out there that is kind of just not fitting well together, right? Like there's some conflicting reports and I don't want to put conflicting reports out there. I want to report what I know to be true. Okay. So we're just going to report the truth. And then we're going to talk about the situation of defensive line recruiting in 2025. That's what we're going to do. Okay. The facts are that Javion Campbell did not make the trip to Notre Dame. We don't anticipate Notre Dame being an option for Javion Campbell. I personally believe, and here's the speculation on my part, is that I think this was more a Javion Campbell-led decision than a Notre Dame-led decision. That's my opinion, though. So I know there's other reports that probably would push back against that. But regardless, the facts. Javion Campbell did not make the visit. He is probably no longer an option for Notre Dame. This one doesn't sit well with me, Sean. Doesn't sit well with me, man. Because I think Notre Dame had a chance with Javion Campbell if they would have went in on this recruitment early when they offered and pushed hard from the beginning. I feel like they would have had a chance at him in the end. They were ahead of the curve, and I think they wasted the curve, for the lack of a better terminology. I think they wasted it a little bit, but Javion Campbell is not going to be a member of the 2025 class for Notre Dame. Ended up not making a visit, and we don't anticipate that being rescheduled or Notre Dame being an option for Javion moving forward.
Which is a departure from traditionally under Marcus Freeman what Notre Dame has done, which is get ahead of the curve on big-time talent, right? Because the other big-time programs are going to be coming on later. Establish the relationship, get the young man to campus 1 or 2 times, and then try to see if you can hold on or get the commitment. And like you said, you squandered that opportunity. And I'm sure we're going to dive into it, man. There seems to be some troubling trends coming when it we talk about defensive line recruiting. It's specifically for the 25 class. You talk about some of the other classes. Development wise, I think defensive line has been a pleasant, based upon what I saw on Saturday. Development wise, Notre Dame seems to be pretty good at developing
Yes.
that young defensive lineman and the talent that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
but from a recruiting standpoint, I understand fans that might have a question about what's going on. So I'm sure we'll get into that, but it's just disappointing that this young man wasn't able to stay connected to Notre Dame throughout the rest of the recruiting process.
Yep. And we'll talk about, I forgot to mention, Sean, at the end, we're going to talk about just kind of the state of 2025 recruiting and what's left, who's on the board, what positions are still active, where does Notre Dame need to close? Sean, I don't know if you agree with this, so I'm just going to throw something out there because we'll talk about a little deeper about defensive line recruiting in 2025. But because Coleman had just said something in the chat, which I think is very interesting. I think it's a very interesting conversation. So Coleman had said, it's not as bad as edge recruiting. That is puzzling. And Coleman, I actually slightly disagree with that, right? Like, I think Viper recruiting is very inconsistent and puzzling. And we'll talk about that. We will. But I really am worried about the interior defensive line future of Notre Dame. I am personally. Because right now, 2024, I'm not worried about it at all. You have two very good defensive tackles already back. You have a couple of good young ones in the pipeline. Interior defensive line on the field is going to be pretty good, in my opinion, in 2024, especially, and then 2025, if guys are able to take jumps. I think they'll be fine. But I look at the last three classes, Sean. I'm like, 2023, you got Devin Houston, who's a true interior player, right? But then you lucked out with getting Armel Mukum, but who eventually has now developed into an interior player. But we'll see what he develops into. We're not 100% sure about that one, right? 2024, Sean, you got one defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman. You got Sean Sevillano. That's it. You forced Owen Wafel out of the class. You didn't find a replacement. So you came up short on numbers in 2024. 2025, as of today, look, Notre Dame seems to think that Joseph Reif is going to be an interior defensive lineman in the long run at Notre Dame. Maybe he is, but right now he's 240 pounds. So we don't know if that's going to be the case or not. We'll see how his body develops, right? So there's a chance, though, that true interior defensive linemen, you got two in the last two classes in 2024 and 2025, unless you find another guy that fits inside, right? So I think interior defensive line recruiting actually gives me, I think that gives me some pause, man. I think I'm a little bit worried about interior defensive line recruiting. Edge, I think they're going to end up being fine. Do they need to be better at recruiting Viper moving forward? For sure. And we could talk about that in nauseum, and we will talk about that in the 2025 board at the end of the show. But and Coleman, I'm just having a conversation, man. Like, this is no shots at you at all. I'm just stating my side where I actually think interior defensive lineman is a little bit of a more hairier situation is all I'm doing, right? Like, it's no shot at you at all. You're a great member of the chat. I'm not throwing shade at all. I promise. I just think, Sean, that if you don't find answers to interior defensive line recruiting moving forward, it's going to become an issue in a couple of years, man. And people could always say, go to the portal. But Brian said this on the message board, and he's spot on about this opinion, is that who are the great interior defensive linemen that Notre Dame has gotten in the portal, shown that they can get. I mean, the only guy that they got is so far as what, Chris Smith? And Chris Smith was a solid rotational player, but how do you know that Notre Dame is going to be a team that can go into the portal and get a high caliber interior defensive lineman? I mean, what proof do we have of that right now, right? So I just think that it's a little bit of I think it's a hairier situation, interior defensive line. I think Notre Dame's got to get something figured out, man. And I just think that Javion Campbell is just the latest instance of like a misstep in recruiting. I just think it was a misstep. I do, personally.
I mean, look, you thought the Fisk kid was a slam dunk, right?
An Indiana kid, yeah, from Indiana, 40 minutes away from Notre Dame. Yeah, I thought that they had a pretty good chance with him. Yeah, I did.
They couldn't get him. So, yeah, you're right. You're right. And it begs the question. And, we don't want to bring up open old wounds when it comes to interior line recruiting 23 and 24 class, but it is what it is, right? And like you said, Viper, edge rushers,
yep,
pretty decent success. There are some kids in the 26 class, pot of gold offers that we feel like, okay, they've done a good job in that class identifying top talent and building the numbers on the interior of the defensive line. But from 25 class, it continues to be a struggle, it seems like. And you try to feel like, yo, what is the issue? Right? Okay, you have a Davion Dixon already in the class.
Who I like Davion. Yeah. I like Davion a lot. Yeah.
Do you feel like, okay, we have our one guy.
Yeah.
Now let's slow walk or, evaluate it from this standpoint. I don't know what the plan is. I don't know what the master plan is. I would be very interested in seeing what it or hearing what it is, but I can't say that we can see it playing out in any way, shape, or form. It's almost like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Sean, and I'll say this, and then we'll move on to this after this. I don't think it's a lack of efforts in recruiting. Like, I really don't. I think just like there's been a couple weird evaluations on the defensive line. Just a couple weird ones last couple cycles where I'm just like, I don't understand what the vision was. Because I just think that and this is natural, right? Like I think Al Washington and in the defensive line staff likes a certain type of player. And I'm totally cool with that. Recruit who you think fits. I'm good with that. But then I think that there's been a couple evaluations and a couple kids that just didn't push for that. I just think's kind of like, isn't that your type though? Like he kind of seems like he would have been your type. And there's just, I don't know. There's just like a very conflicting opinion on that right now. So I don't know. We'll talk about defensive line recruiting a little bit later in the show, but that is the Javion Campbell situation, I guess we'll call it. Probably not going to be an option for Notre Dame moving forward. But let's move on to the positives, okay? Yeah. And someone said Notre Dame has Brendan Vernon at defensive tackle. I mean, we'll see. We'll see.
Once again, you're talking about development.
And he's 274 pounds right now. Like, you don't know if he's going to actually play defensive tackle all the time, if he's in the long-term plans for Notre Dame. Like, it's just, that's a lot of speculation, man. It's not like he ballooned and he's a 290-plus pounder and he's a clear vision inside. Like, you may be forcing a square peg into a round hole, honestly. Like, that might be a situation that you're in with Brendan Vernon. But we'll see. If I'm wrong about that, I'll admit I'm wrong.
Which is why we love, just in the Chicago area, the Chicago kids along defensive line that they're going after. Dude, it's so much versatility in those three kids that we covered last week when we did the show, that if they just land those three kids, you feel really good about the evaluation of the defensive line. If you just get the Chicago kids, but we don't know where those kids line up on the board. They might prefer this kid. They might not prefer this kid. So that is what we're talking about. Like, what is going on with the evaluation? It doesn't seem like anything that we can lock into to say this is what. I think when Mike Brown came in, we immediately started to see, okay, this is what he's looking at. This is the type of kid that he's looking at. Run after catch. Man, we see this.
Right.
I don't know. Like, can we say without question what the game plan on defensive line and recruiting is?
Not really. No. I would say this, that the things that I know about Al Washington is I think Al Washington likes length and guys that can play multiple positions. That's what I feel like Al Washington likes. But again, even there's a couple instances in there where I'm just like, that guy had length and positional flexibility and they didn't want to push for him. So I don't know. So we'll see. But regardless, that's the Javion Campbell situation. Sean, I wanted to talk about this because we weren't going to Backups had a funny response, Sean, where he said they're telling KVA right now to gain 70 pounds. That's absolutely hilarious. I hope obviously they would never do that, but it's just really funny. Sean, let's talk about some positives now, okay? This one is actually not on the message board yet. So I have an intel piece that I put up on Saturday night. Was it Saturday night? Yeah, Saturday night. And then it's kind of been growing a little bit. There's one major player missing from this intel piece because I had just gotten word about a little bit of information before the show started. So even if you're not on the message board, this is the first time that you'll be hearing this a little bit, right? Is that San Juan Capistrano, I probably pronounced it terribly, California, J. Sarah Catholic linebacker, 2025, Madden Fariamo made his second visit to campus this past weekend, Sean. Second time to campus. Notre Dame was included despite him only being on campus once, and it was over a year ago. He was Madden still included Notre Dame in his top 4 schools a little over a month ago. Okay. So obviously Notre Dame is pretty high on his list. Madden visited this weekend. I was told by a source, and this is why we're not going to go super in depth on this one because I haven't had the chance, full transparency. I haven't had the chance to talk to Madden one-on-one yet. Okay. So everything that you guys see on the message board for the most part is me talking one-to-one with kids. And that's why I feel like it's very good sourced because directly from their mouth, right? Directly from their mouth. Madden Fariamo, though, I am told that Notre Dame did very well for themselves this weekend, Sean. There are some believe that Notre Dame is the slight leader coming out of this weekend. Okay. I've got that from a very reliable source that they think that they have a slight lead. And Ohio State is apparently the main team to watch for Madden. He's got USC in his Final Four, who is I know he's been very high on in during the duration of his recruitment as well. But it sounds like Notre Dame made a big move with Madden Fariamo this week. Now, saying they have a slight lead is not saying that today, if we did crystal balls here, that I would be putting a crystal ball in for Madden Fariamo. That's not what I'm saying at all. I think Ohio State, especially, has a chance to reclose that gap and maybe take a lead again. I mean, we'll see what happens, right? But from the phrases that I heard was that Notre Dame had some they had to make up some ground going into the weekend. It sounds like they not only made up the ground, but maybe took a slight lead. Now, I think this one is going to come down, though, Sean, to the official visits. I think that this one is going to be very dependent on, one, getting him back, okay? Getting him back. And then also, obviously, you have to close at that point. So Notre Dame has a good chance here for Madden Fariamo, a player that I did not think Notre Dame had a great chance with for a long time here. This might be a Kingston Viliamos Asa situation, Sean, where it's jockeying back and forth, and Notre Dame's longevity in the recruitment and consistency may end up winning this one in the end. So we'll see if they can close in the end. But certainly a very good weekend and some great a great pulse and vibes coming out of this weekend for Madden Fariamo, the talented linebacker out of Cali.
For the young man to choose a particular practice, everything fell in line. Saturday was an absolutely amazing display for Notre Dame linebackers. Absolutely amazing display. And if a kid was going to come to see what he would look like in Al Golden's defense and be inspired and fall in love with it, that was the right Saturday for Notre Dame to bring the young man in. Like, he saw everything he would want to see. And like you said, another KVA special, another California kid, a connection he can make. He got to watch that young man multiple times flash, make plays, and he could see himself. He could see himself probably in Drake Bowen. First play from scrimmage, swing pass, bam. Like, this is the impact of that defense showing out on Saturday. And it's something that I think we've talked about outside of the show. Like, in recruiting, it's one thing for kids to love the coaches, but you talked about what it comes down to, these visits, right? The unofficial visit, which builds you up to a point to be a major player, for the official visits, for the final decision. And you can talk all you want, you can text all you want, but if that product isn't good, ladies and gentlemen, you won't win at the end. And I can honestly say the product on the field to watch when these kids come to watch practices is a lot better to watch for these young men than it was 2 years ago or even last year. It's just it's a better product, and that yields better recruiting. Like, kids want to see themselves on the field. Like, campus tour, the coaches, all of that, it comes down to these players. Well, and that's why Notre Dame offensive line recruiting, tight end recruiting has always been able to be elite. Why? Because traditionally Notre Dame and their practices play to those tight ends and those offensive linemen can see themselves playing at an elite level in those practices. And that's what it comes down to. And now that trend is starting to change. It's starting to change at multiple positions.
Sean, you did it from a macro level, right? Seeing all
Mhm.
the linebackers. I would take it from a micro level, right? What did you just do in 2024? You got a linebacker from California who was not viewed, you were not viewed as the leader for the majority of this recruitment in Kingston Viliamoasa, okay? And you were able, I'm not saying establish a pipeline because that's something that needs to be established over a few years. It's not an immediate pipeline, but you're telling me that Madden Feriamo wasn't at practice on Saturday and saw Kingston making plays because I read the practice report. I think I heard you talk about him a little bit. Sounds like Kingston was making some plays on Saturday despite being a true freshman in his first spring at the University of Notre Dame. You don't think Madden Feriamo uh, as a school in one of the major Catholic schools in California in the same environment in a similar situation couldn't see himself in Kingston Viliamoasa? Actually, I think their families might be friends, by the way. So I think there's some familiarity there. But I really do believe that Notre Dame made a big move there. Now, Notre Dame they need to close in the end, right? Like this isn't a foregone conclusion type of thing. I mean, I just mentioned Kingston Viliamoasa as a situation that was similar, right? But Sean, I mean, there was a time a couple days beforehand where we didn't know if Notre Dame was going to land Kingston. I mean, it was Ohio State for a little bit there, right? So you need to be able to. We should. We you need to be able to close there. You need to be able to close there. Starting a pipeline in California at some of those major schools, St. John Bosco last year, J. Sarah Catholic, hopefully this year. That's big time for Notre Dame. Speaking of big time, can I bring up this young man? Because we haven't talked about this kid almost at all, okay? I want to talk about Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Carl Albert, cornerback, Tristan Haynes, 2025. 2025, Sean. Very interesting player because Notre Dame's just been kind of steadily, like kind of chipping away this recruitment a little bit, all right? They've been kind of steadily chipping away. And despite the fact that there wasn't a ton of buzz a couple months ago with Notre Dame and Tristan Haynes, he included them in his top schools list. And Sean, he made his first visit to Notre Dame. Okay. And I do have a recap conversation I had with Tristan at irishbreakdown.com. Okay. At irishbreakdown.com. So you guys can go read it over there. It's also on the message board. Notre Dame is putting themselves in a very interesting position, Sean. I'll coin it like this. Okay. I believe Notre Dame is in a good spot with Dallas Golden in the class, still 2025 corner. I think they're in a good spot with Mark Zachary, 2025 corner out of Indianapolis, Indiana. But I believe that even if let's say hypothetically Notre Dame gets both Dallas Golden and Mark Zachary to pair with Creed Thomas, there is still a potential want to take in another corner because those kids are all very diverse. Okay. So Dallas Golden could play nickel if he wanted to. He could play corner. He could play safety. Creed Thomas could play safety. He could play corner. You can kind of mix and match this class a little bit, right? You can mix and match it. So there's a potential to add a fourth corner. And the two names to know, one, Tristan Haynes, who we're talking about right now. The other one is Jameer Joseph out of New Jersey. Those are kind of the two other corners that Notre Dame is still recruiting heavily. Well, Sean, I'll put it this way. Tristan Haynes, despite going to Carl Albert, which is a kind of a feeder for Oklahoma, right? Getting a kid out of Carl Albert away from Oklahoma is a big thing, which is why ultimately, if you ask me today, I would say probably still Oklahoma, right? Like probably, but Notre Dame put themselves in a position to be in this until the end, Sean. And anytime you do that with official visit season still in front of us, I think they got a shot here, man. Talked a lot about the qualities he sees in Notre Dame that are similar to him. Hardworking, head down, nose down, like and the physicality aspect of playing defense at the University of Notre Dame. Some things that you hear that not everybody says, right? And that shows kind of a uniqueness to who Tristan Haynes is and the uniqueness that Notre Dame is. So Notre Dame, I think, has a little bit of a chance here with Tristan Haynes. I think they have a chance. Now, he's not in commitment mode. And he talked to me and he said, I want to take my officials. I want to make a commitment before the season, but I want the official to be the last kind of data point to making a decision, right? So Notre Dame, I think, could be in this until the end, Sean. It's still going to be hard to get him out of Oklahoma, but Tristan Haynes' first visit to South Bend was very, very positive, to say the least. A guy, by the way, Sean, if there's a shortage in wide receivers in the future and Tristan Haynes is on your roster, I'll let him go catch the rock too, man.
Man, you talk
I'll
about
let
the
him go catch the rock.
playmaking ability, the
Yeah.
run after the catchability at the wide receiver position, like kick return value as well, punt return value. And then a guy that can literally be that lockdown field defensive back. You have to love it, man. You have to love what he can bring, this type of athleticism. But it's just Mike Mickens, right? Mike Mickens, look, this type of talent, the fact that you're getting that type of interest from a kid from a feeder school to Oklahoma. We just went back to programs, linebackers that were, traditionally feeder schools right to USC. Like these type of kids, like a KVA, like a Ferriamo, they're going to USC. Linebacker, they're the next Junior Seau, without question, right? They're the next Troy Pete, that's going there. Now everything is changing, right? Because of the coaching staff and guys that have a clear line of what they're doing and what their evaluation is at the position. Mike Mickens does that, right? And so we see that when he takes control of the entire room with Chris O'Leary departure to the NFL. Mm-hmm. Now, can he make an impact on Jadon Blair? he made a heck of an impact on Jadon Blair when he came in. Right, because that's the question. Can Mike Mickens do both?
So much, Sean, that Jay Blair, his father, was in our chat the next day, man, when we were recapping the visit. So, yes, you're correct.
So now we talk about this young man, and once again, what are we talking about? We're talking about this kid coming in, and it's Mike Mickens, man. This is evaluation. This is ability to not only say, "Look at what I've done. Look at what I've done, and look at what I'm currently doing." Mm-hmm. Look at what Benjamin Morrison is going to be. Look at what Christian Gray is going to be. Look, dude, the pipeline is starting. You can be in that pipeline. And then he can say, yeah, I know you're an Oklahoma kid. What's the last top Oklahoma defensive back that they developed? What? Because this is what we're building. Yeah. What?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, dude, it's so bad, Sean, but you mentioned Oklahoma defensive back, and my mind went to Roy Williams, and I'm like, there's got to be somebody more recent than Roy Williams, right?
Think about it. But I mean, I don't even know if he would say that. I'm just saying that from my perspective. He's building that defensive back room to get to that echelon, to whereas if you want to negative recruit, you can just say, look, it's almost like what Alabama's able to say, what Georgia's able to say with their defensive back rooms, with two coaches that specifically coach that particular position. That's why Alabama and Georgia are so good at getting defensive backs. Okay, not only do we, the head coach, hands-on, coaches me. Kirby is going to coach me hands-on. Nick Saban is going to coach me hands-on. And they have a track record of getting their defensive backs to the NFL. That's something Mike Mickens can start to lay down for Notre Dame, even though he's not the head coach, but he can start to lay down, even at the safety position now. It's very exciting. Look, ladies and gentlemen, please go watch this young man's film. Please.
It's pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Pretty darn good.
It's pretty good.
Man.
Yeah. Sean, can I say this? And this is wild to think about, okay? Someone said Tony Jefferson is a recent Oklahoma DB. Okay, that's fair. Tony Jefferson's a good player. That's a good player.
Peyton would probably, Peyton's.
Peyton Bowen could end up being a stud, but
he's
yeah.
A safety, yeah.
Well, so Sean, ready? I'm going to say this, and it's wild to think about. We'll talk about this more in the end a little bit, but this is what 2025 secondary can end up being. I'm only going to say this, Sean, with players that I believe Notre Dame leads for right now. Okay. For right now. Okay. So right now, you have at corner, Creed Thomas already committed in the class. I believe Notre Dame leads for Mark Zachary and Dallas Golden. Okay. At safety, they already have Ivan Taylor, who's a stud, and they have Ethan Long, who's a very good player out of Connecticut. And I believe they lead for Jadon Blair right now, too. If you get that class that I just said of players that you have commitments from right now and lead for, okay, that is the best secondary class Notre Dame has had in my memory. I don't know one. I don't know. I don't like what class is better than that. I mean, definitely not anything recent, like nothing even close to recently, right? Like it's
If that class indeed shows up this time next year, there are going to be some people in the secondary in Notre Dame that have to make some serious decisions. The simple as that. Might be some second, third year players that might have to say, you know what?
What I mean, Sean, like this is no exaggeration, okay? 2025. Let's just talk about safety for a second. 2025. Adon Schuler sounds like he's taking a step this spring, man. That's what it sounds like. Even though I heard he met someone in a hole on Saturday, did not win that battle, but that's a different conversation for a different day, okay? But Adon Schuler, I believe, is going to be a very good player for Notre Dame long term, okay? I believe Luke Talich is going to be a nice player for Notre Dame long term. 2024 safeties that are coming in, I think Bronte has the chance to be that dude if his body develops, he stays healthy. There's a lot of things around that conversation. But legitimately, Sean, if you got Jadon Blair and you have Ivan Taylor and even Ethan Long, you throw Ethan Long in this conversation, all three of those kids are talented enough to compete year one at Notre Dame. All three of them. And if I'm them, I'm like, bro, I'm going to go start next year. I'm going to go start in 2025. I'm going to figure it out because there's going to be a safety spot open, I mean, there might be two depending. I mean, like it looks like Adon's taking a step, right? And Adon might be a starter this year and he might be the guy, right? So I'm just saying, man, that safety's open for Notre Dame moving forward. It is because you're going to be out without Xavier Watts. You are. Rod Hurd only has 1 year. Like you're going to be without those two kids. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity at safety. At corner, there's going to be a spot open too because Benjamin Morrison's probably going after this year, most likely. Jordan Clark is going to be going after this year at the nickel. So, I mean, Micah Bell looks good, right? Like he might be he might be the starter at nickel in 2025, maybe. We have a couple of nice young corners coming in and Carson Hobbs and Leonard Moore. But I mean, there's no reason to think that a Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, Creed Thomas, like they can't come in and make some noise, right? Like you come in and you're ready to go. So not only does secondary potentially one of the best Notre Dame has ever had, maybe the best ever Notre Dame's ever had. I'm not a recruiting historian like that. I don't know what they pulled in 1995 or 1998 or like something like that, right? But they have the talent to not only come in and be the best recruiting class that we've seen in the secondary ever, possibly. But they also have a chance to compete in 2024. I mean, 2025. Like they have the chance, man. So Tristan Haynes might be a part of that. Because could you imagine? All of that was to say this is that if you just close on the players that you were leading for and you get that 6-man class, there's a possibility they could still add a Tristan Haynes or Jermaine Joseph, where it's like, well, Mike Mickens is going to be a good spot over the next few years because you just added a stupid amount of talent in 2025. Like, wild to think about, man. Absolutely wild. Yep. But let's move on because we're delaying this conversation, Sean. Lot to get through here, guys. So we're going to work through a little bit faster because we got 3 other segments to get through, by the way. This is not the only segment of the show, so we need to get moving a little bit. Sean, I want to bring out, this one is near and dear to my heart, okay? Near and dear to my heart. We're actually going to talk about a couple of players that have USC connections in back-to-back segments here, okay? Let's talk about 2026 Los Angeles, California, Loyola cornerback, Brandon Lockhart, who's considered the number 15 overall player and number 1 cornerback in the 2026 class, according to 247 Sports. So he's considered very high, has offers. Well, he's currently committed to USC, by the way. Also has offers from Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, amongst a long list. Sean, he committed to USC in October. Despite that commitment, he is keeping his options open, sir. And you know where he was this past weekend, Sean? You know where he was? He was in South Bend, Indiana, my guy. He was in South Bend, Indiana. Okay. First and foremost, getting a USC commit on campus is a pretty good look if you're Notre Dame. Okay. Just out of the spitefulness of our hearts, we all hate Notre Dame here. I mean, we all hate USC here. So out of the spitefulness of being a Notre Dame fan, awesome to get a USC kid on campus. From my conversation with Brandon this weekend, Sean, Notre Dame gave him a lot to think about. Okay. He felt it. He said something like the feeling was just different. Like he couldn't even explain it. Okay. I will make a prediction here, but it's not the prediction that you guys are seeing. Okay. or not the prediction you guys are expecting. I don't know if Brandon Lockhart ends up with Notre Dame in the 2026 class. I don't know that, Sean. But one thing that I do believe will happen is I don't believe that he'll end up with USC. That's my intel. And
Wow.
that's not based upon him telling me that, okay? By
Mm-hmm.
everything he is saying, he's locked into USC, but he's keeping his options open, okay? That's from Brandon. But from my pulse, I just believe that he's very open, okay? Very, very open. And I would actually be slightly surprised if he ended up with USC in the 2026 class. So Notre Dame, I think, made a move there, but there's going to be a lot of other schools to fight against here. So this isn't a Notre Dame's going to make Brandon Lockhart flip to him, right? It's not going to make Brandon Lockhart flip to him. And he's not a USC legacy. We'll talk about the USC legacy next, actually. But yeah, Sean, Brandon Lockhart in a interesting spot there, man. We'll see if Notre Dame's able to do enough to push him to the class eventually, but I do think that he is open for business potentially.
All right. Legacy
Well,
next, right?
yes. Oh, this one's fun, right? So I know you talked about him a little bit at one point, Sean, because I think you remember the father.
Oh,
So
dude, that's why I was like, yo, I watched this dude's father play. Like, this is crazy.
well, all right. Well, so here I'll intro it and I'll let you get going on this one, man. Rancho Cucamonga, California, 2026 cornerback R.J. Sermons, or better known as Rodney Sermons Jr., Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Father played running back from 1994 to 1997
Yeah.
for the USC Trojans. Okay, from the USC Trojans. What are your recollections of his father? Good player?
Hey,
He's a good ball player?
man, I remember when he came in as a freshman, he was supposed to be one of those next great in the line of great running backs at USC, and he never reached those heights. I do remember I think he had a knee injury, if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
early in his career, and he
Mm-hmm.
came back from it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was, coming out of high school, he had
He
some
was that guy.
legendary numbers. Yeah, he had some legendary numbers out there in California. So his kid in his film doesn't disappoint. Does not disappoint. Legacy USC. So, he probably grew up. But I mean, Notre Dame just landed a commitment from a kid that we felt like growing up in the shadows of another great historic program. We
Yep.
felt like, oh man, it's probably going to come down to that program and everybody else. And lo and behold, Notre Dame ends up getting a commitment. So, it could be the same thing for Sermon.
Yeah, man. So we'll see what happens with Sermon moving forward, but a very good initial look at Notre Dame. I want to read a couple quotes here, Sean. Okay, so a couple quotes. He said, and this is something that we hear consistently with Notre Dame, just
Mm-hmm.
consistently. The conversations between the coaches were good. He said they taught me some valuable things and were honest and real, which I liked a lot. We hear about honesty a lot with the Notre Dame staff, a whole lot. And then he also said, Sean, the school is just different. And I like it and what it has to offer beyond football, Sermons explained. I would see myself potentially fitting well as a high level cornerback to learn under Mike Mickens. That sounds like a lot of interest to me, sir. Sounds like a lot of
Mm-hmm.
interest to me. Again, first visit to Notre Dame, first ever trip to South Bend, Indiana. But first and foremost, because these are all unofficial visits, right? Which means Rodney Sermons and his family had to get Rodney Sermons Jr. to campus, right? So it
Mm-hmm.
costs a pretty penny going from Cali to South Bend, Indiana. It's not the easiest it's not the easiest trip of all time as far as from a money perspective. So they got him to South Bend, Sean. It certainly sounds like they did a great job there. We'll see. And he's already talking about coming back again. He's already talking about coming back again. We'll see if the high from the visit wears off and that changes at some point. But certainly things are in a good spot with Rodney Sermons Jr. Last guy I wanted to talk about. This is a very interesting one. Okay. A very interesting one. And we had someone ask if Notre Dame's selling the 4 for 40 with these top recruits. They're always going to sell that. I've heard a different pitch on it though, Sean. I don't know if you heard this from a couple of recruits. Some have said now 4 for forever. And I was like, that's deep. Like that's pretty deep, man. 4 for
But
40 is nice, but like 4 for forever. I was like, oh, okay. That's
it's
a
like
little different extension.
if you are a handsome dude, do you really lead with that?
Mm-hmm.
That's what Notre Dame, who it is, and their education and degree. Like, you don't have to talk about that. You don't have to lead with that. That's you. As soon as you walk up, they know. As soon as they get the letter, the offer, they know. It comes with the territory. So
Yeah.
now that that's established, when you go after these elite kids, it's like, okay, you already know that part. We can talk about that. But now, what we've been hearing, they're being honest and truthful. That's what we hear from all these kids. We heard Marcus Freeman after the practice. We're having honest and truthful conversations with guys in our current roster.
Yep.
That permeates. Jeremiah Love talked about it in his recruitment. But Coach McCullough, man, we purposely tried to see if we were going to be lied to. And Notre Dame passed the test with flying colors.
They were literally trying to set them up to be caught cheating, caught lying, excuse me. And Notre Dame passed the test with the Love
I don't
family.
think Notre Dame's at a place where they don't have to. You don't have to lead with that. You're handsome. You're a good looking dude. You know that already. Now let's see what your other conversation is about. Let's see if you're funny. Let's see if you can make me laugh. Let's see if I can have fun around you. Let's see all the other things. And when you hear kids talking about, we all hear all the kids say the same thing. Like the 26 kids that got the offers for the pot of gold. What they all say? Man, Notre Dame getting the offer from Notre Dame, man, is
special.
Big time school. It's special. It's offer. Yeah, that's fine. You're gonna get that. Because the kids already know before they get the offer. They already know what Notre Dame stands for.
That's a good point, Sean.
Once they start visiting, though, what else do you have?
Well, Sean, that's a great point, because we always talk about how big visiting is at Notre Dame, because I think like 98% of kids that get offered by Notre Dame understand that like Notre Dame's a very unique program, right? Like it's a very unique pitch, but I don't know if everyone thinks that they necessarily fit until they visit Notre Dame, right? Like fit into those values, and it's just, yeah, man. I think that's a great point. It really is, because we always talk about, it doesn't become real until you get on campus, but like, why is that, right? Because I think that a lot of kids don't know that they can be that difference all the time, and I think that that's why some gravitate towards it and some don't gravitate towards it, because it's not a place that they are comfortable with, a place that they do fit. So yeah, I think Notre Dame is different in that sense. Last guy I want to talk about from the past visitor, Sean, and then we'll get into some early blue gold conversation. We'll get into some visitors this week and during the blue gold, and then we'll talk about the rest of the 2025 class. Okay. I want to talk about a young man that visited this weekend, Sean. That's a pretty highly rated kid that does not hold an offer from Notre Dame. Okay. So that is, and if Tommy Guns is in the chat, he is going to hate hearing this, because apparently this is a school that he does not like as a Ohio guy. So Akron, Ohio, Archbishop Hoban, wide receiver, 2026, Sean, Peyton Cook, who is rated on the Rivals ranking as a four-star, number 94 overall player, number 15 wide receiver in the 2026 class. So rated as a top 100 player early on by one major platform. He has offers from Michigan, Pittsburgh, Kentucky, Louisville, Miami. Sorry, the list is pulling up. Tennessee, Wisconsin, Purdue, Indiana so far, Sean. So a pretty healthy offer list early for a 2026 recruit, and a very healthy ranking for the Archbishop Hoban wide receiver. Well, Sean, we just talked about honesty, right? You want to hear honesty here? Peyton Cook as a top 100 ranked wide receiver in the 2026 class by one platform, the number 135 overall player on the On3 industry ranking, okay? That has offers to Miami, Tennessee, Michigan, among several others, okay? You know what Notre Dame told him this weekend, Sean? That my piece is out there on Peyton Cook, by the way. It was out last night, I believe, or this morning, one or the other. He said that Notre Dame really likes him and they want to continue to build a relationship with him. But they're not extending an offer to him yet, Sean, until he gets back on campus and works out. They want to see him in person, and they want to see what he looks like. And you know what happened, Sean? Because most people would hear that conversation, and a lot of kids would be like, screw that. I'm not getting an offer. Are you kidding me? Well, they were honest to Peyton, And he literally said, I was so grateful that they were honest with me. And I'm going to come back this summer to earn my offer from the University of Notre Dame. I'm coming back and camping. Okay. I just want to throw that out there because that was one of the conversations that I had to take a step back after talking to Peyton Cook because I'm like, a top 100 kid potentially that has a really good offer list at a prominent program in Ohio that has options on the table was grateful for Notre Dame for being honest with him and wants to come back this summer to earn his offer from the University of Notre Dame. I just thought that was so different, Sean. I like just the uniqueness of it. I want to give Peyton Cook like mad props there for a second because there's a lot of kids out there that would again be like, screw that, dude. Like, go watch my film. I deserve that offer. And he's like, I'm gonna work for it. I just thought that was unique, man. Just like shout out to the kid. But also shout out to Notre Dame for not being dishonest with him, right? Not leading them on and being like, oh, yeah, just keep in touch. The offer will come eventually. Like, no, they told him straight up, what do you have to do to earn that offer? Like, straight up, right?
Yeah.
Straight up. I think that's a really great thing, man. Personally, just from me perspective, I thought that was a very honest thing that Notre Dame did. And I applaud Peyton for being mature enough to be like, you know what? All right, sounds good. I'll do that. Bet.
That's great to hear coming
Yeah.
from both sides because in recruiting, you have to advocate, right? I have no problem with parents or recruits asking that question. Hey, what do I have to do? What is it that you're exactly looking for? You want me to come work out? Well, what type of workout? Like, this is a two-way conversation. And so that's what honesty does, right? It brings liberty and freedom to relationships. It builds trust. And Notre Dame is fastly becoming one of the most trustworthy, in my opinion, one of the most trustworthy staff on the recruiting trail. And that is a feather in their recruiting cap that they need to keep there without question.
Well, Sean, that's the updates from this past weekend, man. There's a couple guys we didn't get to. We will get through it throughout the rest of the week, though, guys. We wanted to give you the biggest, well, I'm going to say biggest, the most vital recruits that Notre Dame had on campus this past weekend. Obviously, we talked about the 2025 players that did make the trip. Talk about some early 2026 names to know. We're going to get into some blue and gold talk, Sean. Are you going to be in town, by the way? Are you going to be at the blue and gold game this weekend?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, well, we're about to talk blue and gold, guys. And a part of that blue and gold conversation, we're going to talk about some players that are going to be on campus at Notre Dame. We're also going to be talking about some visitors that Notre Dame's going to have this week as well from a recruiting perspective. So don't go anywhere. We have 3 more segments to go, man. We're not leaving, okay? We're not leaving. You guys can leave, but we're not leaving. We'll be here. We'll be here, okay? Before we go into the next segment, though, if you could just hit that like button for me, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. Hit that notification bell if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, whether that's Apple, Spotify, anything in between. 5-star reviews are very much appreciated. Also, go to boards.irishbreakdown.com. You would have known most of this information today if you were signed up at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Don't tell me to calm down. This is my show. I can be as loud as I want to, okay? Obviously joking. But we'll get to you guys next segment, talking some blue gold game next here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown podcast. All right, Shawnee. So you're going to be here on Saturday, huh? You're going to be here. You're going to check out the game. Excited for it?
Yeah,
You excited?
I am. The vibe last year was amazing. I think that's something that we can talk about, right? Just investment in the past, something that Marcus Freeman did. He talked about decisions and things just don't happen in life, right? Small decisions lead up to big time events happening in our lives, right? And you have to consistently make, I'm sure you have 2 young girls, you're going to talk for the next 15 to 16 years. If you make consistent good decisions, you'll see the benefit of it. And this vibe and everything you just spoke about with the visitors from last week at the scrimmage, with the upcoming visitors to the blue and gold game, the product, the vibe, and everything that they're going to feel that makes them feel like, yeah, I see Notre Dame is different. I do belong here. I can see myself here. Started with Marcus Freeman buying into and investing into the tradition and the past of Notre Dame when he took the job. Unlike his predecessor, he decided to buy into it. And now you're getting Joe Montana showing up at games. You're getting other greats of the past, Joe Theismann constantly being a presence, showing up. That adds to the vibe of this big weekend coming up, along with the improved product in the practice, in the scrimmage game, in the blue and gold game, and during the season. Everything's trending upward, and I'm excited to be part of this weekend, Double R.
Well, Sean, I would say this too. Okay, all right. Besides those Notre Dame greats you were talking about, you know who else is going to be there? Guarantee Ryan Clark will be there, baby.
Yes,
Guarantee
sir.
Ryan Clark will be there. There's gonna be some. There's gonna be some high level former NFL players. I mean, we talked about this last year, and we'll get into this. The importance of the blue gold game from the recruiting perspective. But Sean, this is a game every single year. And I think we talked about it last year. What was it like? Over 200 former Notre Dame alumni last year, or 300? It was like
Mm-hmm.
a crazy number last year, man. Notre Dame needs to make this weekend cool. They need to make it cool.
Yes.
And you know what's pretty cool? Having Brian Urlacher on campus potentially, having
Mm.
Ryan Clark on campus, having Jerome Bettis and maybe Jerome Bettis Jr. on campus. Like that stuff's cool, man. Maybe Elijah Burris and Plexico Burris will be there on campus. You know what I mean? Like that's the cool stuff. That's the stuff that we need. All we need now is to get Lloyd Carr to come to South Bend and put on the Notre Dame jersey, and we'll be good to go cheering on his grandson. Like, let's get this rocking, man. Let's get this rocking. And blue gold's awesome. I unfortunately will not be there this year. I've been there the last 2 years, I believe, last 2 years. Sean, 2 kids now, right? I've kind of have exhausted my travel privileges for the next couple months, early on, going down to San Antonio and Indianapolis. And
Indianapolis, and then
yeah,
it
yeah.
is, yeah.
So travel might be limited for the next couple months. It might be limited for the next couple months.
Yeah, it's
But
the price you pay. You can't win them all.
But if anybody is around South Bend or can get themselves out for the blue gold game, guys, you go. You go. It's a general admission, right? And you get to sit wherever you want. First come, first serve the seats, man. You could seat front row center for this thing if you're there at the right time. It is a great vibe, tremendous recruiting weekend, which is obviously why we're going to talk about this, Sean. And that goes into the importance of this game, though. It's a majorly important game. And we're going to talk about some players that were actually on campus on campus last year that ended up in the 2024 class specifically, because there's going to be some players, and we'll get into it in this section as well. But there's going to be some players that are not committed to Notre Dame right now, but will be eventually. They're going to be on campus as visitors this weekend, Sean. It's going to be huge for them because these are the games that every recruit flocks to. Let's forget about the Notre Dame layer for a second. Everyone's always on recruit watch of what spring games are these recruits going to, because that's the vibe, right? Game day atmosphere, hanging out with the recruits, hanging out with the team members, hanging out with the coaches. It's a vibe, man. It is absolutely a vibe. I know you've been there before. I know you look forward to it, but just if we can have a little bit of an insightful conversation of let's put ourselves in these recruits' shoes for a second. You're not getting closer to a game day atmosphere other than a game day atmosphere than going to the spring game. You're not going to get it anywhere else. So I think it's going to be massive for Notre Dame.
It's always massive. And I think we felt the vibes last, blue and gold game. It was just kind of marred by some other things that were taking place.
Yep.
That eventually manifested themselves in the off season. Mm-hmm. But I think the environment now is so much more non-toxic, shall I say, than it was this time last year. And moving forward, I expect it to have a tremendous impact on the recruits showing up. You talked about the list of guys that showed up last year that ended up in the class. Great KVA, Bodie Calhoun, Bryce Young, Styles Prescott, Michael Gilbert, and all of those kids are not just commitments. You're talking about kids that are flashing.
Yes.
During the spring as early enrollees. So it's very important to make a very good impression at the blue and gold game. I'm excited to see what kids come out of this, either within a commitment, possibly to Notre Dame, or, Notre Dame surging to the top of their list and earning a commitment later on in the summer.
Well, Sean, let's talk about some data points. You just mentioned a bunch of them, okay? Let's talk about the 2024 kids that were not committed to Notre Dame at the time, last blue gold game. of 2024 or 2023,
Mhm.
excuse me, but ended up in the class for 2024. And then we'll talk about the 2025 kids that are committed that were there as well, that were uncommitted recruits at the time. So 2024, Notre Dame had Micah Gilbert on campus, okay, as an uncommitted player. They had Styles Prescott, you mentioned. They had Bryce Young. They had Kingston Viliamoasa. They had Bodie Cahoon that were all on campus, okay? All of them. They actually had Isaiah Canyon on campus too, who was not committed at the time that ended up did commit to Notre Dame, but then obviously decommitted and then later enrolled with Georgia Tech. But regardless, Notre Dame got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players in the 2024 class that were not committed during the Bloom Gold game. And I would say this very easily, Sean. I think that they pretty much sealed the deal with Micah Gilbert on that trip. I think they sealed the deal with Styles Prescott. I think they pretty much sealed the deal with Bryce Young. I think they pretty much sealed the deal with Bodie Cahoon on that trip. So I would argue that 4 out of 5 Notre Dame sealed the deal with in 2024. Now the 2025 class, which we're still on, Sean, Jerome Bettis Jr. was there, and these are all uncommitted players. Okay, Jerome Bettis Jr. was there. James Flanagan was there. Davion Dixon was there. Christopher Burgess was there. Anthony Sacca was there. And also, not a commit, but a player that's still very high on Notre Dame and is a key target, Dallas Golden was also on campus for the Blue Gold game last year. So Notre Dame did pretty dang well, man. They did pretty dang well last year. So again, that's 6 players 2024 that they ended up, well, let me make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players that they ended up in their 2024 class that were uncommitted at the Blue Gold game last year. They now have commitments from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 players, maybe 6 if they get Dallas Golden of the 2025 kids that were on campus. So that's pretty good, Sean. That means that's 11 players potentially that Notre Dame got commitments from or signed with Notre Dame of the 2024 and 2025 class last spring game. That's a good number, man. That's a good number.
It's a
So
darn good number. Darn good number. Would you say the spring game for Notre Dame is more impactful than any other spring game when we talk about elite programs because of certain things that they have to do to get out in front of other schools? Then the spring game or the scrimmage becomes of that even more important to make an
yeah,
impression on these kids.
I think it's very important for Notre Dame because of this, Sean. We hear a lot of these kids say that, and this is a pretty consistent thing. I want to go to my OVs and then I'll make a decision before the season. That's usually the track that most kids try to stay on. But we
Mhm.
know that these types of visits, if they go really well, kids' plans change. Like they just change. They just do. And they change because of these types of visits. These types of visits, I think, can speed up a recruiting process. It could speed things up a little bit. So, and I think that it did. I mean, again, if we look at that list that I just mentioned, I would say it sped up the process of Bryce Young, Micah Gilbert, Styles Prescott, Bodie Cahoon. Probably 4 out of 5 of those kids that committed to Notre Dame in the 2024 class from that event, they probably sped up. Probably sped up just based upon being at that game and
Yeah.
seeing everything and seeing because they do everything there, Sean, right? Like, don't they do the player walk and everything, don't they? I think I remember last year they doing a player walk for the spring game. Am I wrong about that? I feel like they
Yeah.
did.
Dude, the Friday night festivities are like, I'll be honest. I was trying to find a way to sneak in. I was trying to find a way. I was trying to get into the big tent, bro. you
Yeah.
know, I was trying to I was trying to get Malik to sneak me in. I was like,
Try
yo,
getting the
sneak me.
tent.
Yo, I
Oh
want to be
god.
over there with the alums and the big money people. But no, absolutely. I do believe they do everything. And I don't think, look, let's be honest, man.
Yep.
Notre Dame fans are the best fan base, in my opinion. But, what you see at a school like Ohio State is almost cultish.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, dude, for them to get 70 stacked at a scrimmage, that's you have to shake your head. Even a Notre Dame fan has to say, that's pretty impressive, yo. 70,000 the spring game, that's pretty impressive. I don't think you get 70,000 at Notre Dame Stadium, of course, because Notre Dame fans are spread out. It's not as easy to get to the game,
Yep.
for a lot of Notre Dame alumni, so it's a little bit different. Okay, Archer. I'm sorry. It was on Fox Sports. They said 70,000. So that's what I'll roll with. They were at the game. Yeah, you could talk about that quarterback play though. Talk about that. Talk about that.
I didn't even watch the
No,
game.
I'm
Was it
just
bad?
teasing.
I
I'm
didn't
just
even
teasing.
watch. I didn't
Was
even
it
watch it. Was it
bad?
bad? I didn't
Was
watch
it
it.
bad?
Didn't watch it yet. Yeah.
You know, well, they're fine with their youngsters. I'll say that their youngsters are fine. Their two young kids are fine. But
Yeah. Oh, I like Aaron Noland and what's his
yeah,
name too. Yeah, he's
yeah.
good. They're good players. Julian Sand.
See,
I like Julian Sand.
but Julian saying and yeah, Aaron Nolan, they're fine.
I
They'll
like
be
them.
fine.
They're talented
Yeah,
kids. Yeah, no
but
doubt.
the other two kids, Devin Brown and
Yeah. I heard Devin Brown's pretty bad, man. I've heard he's pretty
uh,
bad. I don't know. Yeah.
But to get back to these guys
Yeah.
coming in, yeah, it's
Oh,
absolutely a fantastic weekend. I think
it is.
everything that they do, and for me, it's funny because I've never watched the blue and gold game from the press box.
Oh, you're in the press box this
No,
year?
I'm a man of the people. I go sit with the people. I go sit with the people. I end up having some great conversations, man, with great people. Yeah, I sit with the people.
Yeah, I mean, I always like going in the press box, but I actually agree with that, man. I kind of like just being down there, Like
Mhm.
I've never been in the press box for the blue gold game. I just like to be front row and center. Like maybe if I had
Yeah,
to work and more break down the game like Brian would have to, maybe I would appreciate the box a little bit more. But like
yeah,
just for like general enjoyment, I feel like that kind of front row and center thing is pretty neat. I think it's a pretty I just like, and I always recommend this for people that haven't been to a Notre Dame game or a spring game in general. Get there early, man. Get them early in the day and
yeah,
just walk around. Even if you don't drink or anything, go hang out with the tailgaters. Just walk around. Go to the bookstore. Walk around. Go to the grotto. Go do everything, man. Just do everything. On a game day, obviously, we're talking about like the trumpets under the dome and the
yeah,
grotto and player
yeah.
walk and all that type of stuff. But regardless, get to campus early. Get to it early. Okay. And I don't know what the ticket prices are for this game, Sean, but I guarantee it's not that much for a spring game.
Well,
Like, I don't think it's very much.
I've been blessed with tickets the last 2 years, so
Nice.
I wouldn't know what admission. I would always bring my young athletes from ministry with
Okay.
me every year. So back then it was like $5. I think it was like $5, $7, something like that to get in. It's $10 now. Okay, yeah. I'm talking like 10 years ago. It was like
$10
five,
to
seven.
sit wherever you
Sit
want,
wherever you want.
sir.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
honestly, you like if you're lucky, you'll get to see some of these players, the recruits that we're going to talk about, right? And be able to like walk around and meet them. Sean, there's a legitimate chance that you might walk around on Saturday in the morning and walk past Ryan Clark or Jerome Bettis Sr. That's a possibility that happens, man. It is so dope. So dope. Just go early, enjoy.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Please do it.
Man.
Please do
You
it.
gotta love it.
Yep. And so, Sean, the visitor list is going to expand. Okay, it's going to expand. We have a good running list so far, though, and just a couple of names that I wanted to hit on that are very important for the 2025 class, and then we'll talk about a couple of 2026 class kids. We're not going to go super in depth on this, right? Because we're going to have a more of a breakdown at the end of the week. It's going to be a little bit more of a blue gold preview. This is just kind of an early conversation. But they want to hit on the 2025 kids that are scheduled to be there, Sean, that we know for sure. Okay. One is 2025 Cocoa, Florida high school wide receiver, Javon Boggs. Okay. If Cocoa sounds familiar, the same high school as Brady Hart in the 2026 class, who feel good about where Notre Dame is with Brady Hart right now. Well, this is his teammate that's a year older. Okay. Was once committed to Ohio State. This will be his first visit to Notre Dame. He'll actually be getting in on Friday and then staying through the game. So Friday and Saturday, Javon Boggs will be in Notre Dame. Okay, we'll be in South Bend. Sean, this is a very interesting man. Very interesting. Someone said Davion Dixon is a defensive lineman. Did I say he was an offensive lineman or something? I don't know. But
I
anyway.
missed that. Weren't we talking about him in the midst of the
Yeah, we were
conversation
talking about
about
defensive
defensive
lineman.
linemen? I
I don't
thought
know.
so.
I don't know. Maybe I misspoke at some point. I don't know. I was just reading a comment. But Javon Boggs, Sean, this one's very interesting because Javon Boggs is being pushed for by a lot of big teams, right? You're committed to Ohio State, who is a good at developing wide receivers we've seen in recent years. I mean, Brian Hartline has done a tremendous job with the wide receiver room. They can pretty much get just about any wide receiver that they want in the country. I mean, it's wide receiver room has been silly good the last few
Yeah,
years and then moving into the
yeah.
future. But he decommitted from Ohio State, Javon Boggs, and he's being recruited by a lot of good schools. Now, Notre Dame actually offered him a few weeks before he ended up decommitting from Ohio State. So I don't know if there was just a overall pulse or understanding that it was going to happen. Like it was a predetermined thing that was going to happen. I'm not really 100% sure. I do have a visit preview interview with Javon Boggs that will be on Irish Breakdown very soon here. Okay. Very, very soon. And Sean, I'm interested to see how this weekend goes, man. I'm not sure exactly where Notre Dame stands with Javon, other than he talks to them a lot and he says he likes them. But is it a real fit? Does he see himself here? We won't know that until the game. We won't know that until afterwards when I have the chance to talk to him and then I do a recap video. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
I like Javon on film, though. I like him on film. He's very competitive. He posted a video earlier of him mugging a dude off the line of scrimmage and winning through contact, and he got up barking, right? So he's an interesting kid. He's a very competitive young man, and he almost had 1,500 receiving yards last year, Sean, in 15 games and 23 touchdowns. So very productive, to say the least, in a very talent-rich area of the country as well. Coco plays some good teams in the state of Florida. Very good teams.
And just
So,
in case you missed
so can
it,
they make a move, Sean? Can they make a move this weekend? That's the question we need that remains to be answered.
I know Notre Dame fans want to connect the dots, right? You can go back and watch the interview Ryan and I did with Brady Hart, and in the midst of the conversation, Javon Boggs came up, and at that time he was still committed to Ohio State when he was talking about all the playmakers he had around him. And then, it was funny because you saw him and Brady Hart messing around on social media with eyeballs and everything. And this was leading up to Brady Hart's, visit to Notre Dame. And then he asked Brady, how's the visit going up there? So now it's a lot of people trying to connect the dots, and he's showing up for the blue and gold game. Look, we'll see, man. Could it mean something? Could it be breadcrumbs to the dynamic duo possibly being at Notre Dame? Stay tuned, Notre Dame fans. Isn't that how they used to end every Batman episode? Stay tuned. So maybe we get our own Batman and Robin coming to South Bend, but it's exciting that this type of talent is even interested in coming to Notre Dame and coming up for the spring game. And Notre Dame definitely has an opportunity to make a move coming on the heels of his boy just being in South Bend and the tremendous visit that he had. Is definitely an opportunity for Notre Dame to make inroads.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So he's going to be a big one. Brandon Plensner's in the chat mad at me for saying competitive. Apparently is the first thing that pops up, but it is, honestly. I mean, look, I don't think Javon Boggs is a burner. So I saw someone in the chat say he was a 4.3 kid. I don't see 4.3 kid, man. I don't see that. I think he runs fine. I don't see 4.3 kid though. For me, what is the biggest separator for him? When the ball's in the air, it's his. Just flat out. When the ball's in the air, it's his. And I think he's smooth off the line. I think he beats press well from what I've seen on film. But I don't think he's a burner. I don't think he's a burner necessarily. But I think he's got solid speed, good speed. But he's a very talented player. And one that we'll talk about in the end of the show. Notre Dame is recruiting heavily at wide receiver. And we'll see if Notre Dame is able to make a move this weekend. The other one, Sean, had a report on this, okay, that Josh Petty, talented offensive lineman in the 2025 class out of the state of Georgia. Okay. Elite player, in my opinion. I think he's a top 15, top 20 player in this class. He was originally supposed to be on campus this past weekend. He had some personal issues, was not able to make the trip. I had the report on that on the message board at boards.com. He is planning a multi-day visit starting the end of this week and staying for the blue and gold game. So he is expected to be there, Sean. Look, full transparency, I think Josh Petty is not going to end up with Notre Dame, if I'm being honest, right? I think that's a little bit of a pipe dream, but they got him on campus, right? So, like,
Mhm.
that's a good sign. A kid that's been talking about getting on campus for months and months and months, a kid that's been talking to Notre Dame for months and months and months, is finally getting on campus. So maybe you knock it out of the park. Maybe you impress him. Notre Dame has a chance here. I don't think it's feasible. I don't think it's realistic that Josh Petty ends up in Notre Dame's class in the 2025 class at offensive line, but they have a shot this weekend to impress him, to say the least.
I think they're going to end up, this might end up being one of the most impactful blue and gold games just from the excitement on the field. And I think it's going to be one of the most entertaining blue and gold games. I actually made that um, prediction Saturday when we were doing the scrimmage report on Irish Breakdown. I was like, yo, I think this is going to be a really entertaining, even if it's just the two young quarterbacks playing. Let's say they just tell the two veterans, you know what, go sit down. We get to watch the two young quarterbacks play with the rest of the talent. It might end up being one of the most entertaining blue and gold games, which lends to what we said, the improved product helps out in recruiting and getting this young man on campus, which kind of lines up with Joe Rudolph, right? That was one of the questions we had when he took over here. He's saying, like, how is this going to impact recruiting? And then he loses Derby Lambert in the sense, and then we're like, yo, he has to get Derby Lambert back on campus. What does he do? He gets him back on campus. Not only does he get him back on campus, that Notre Dame he leaves the visit with Notre Dame pretty much back at the top after questioning, like, yo, what is this going to look like after this visit? And we can say Josh Petty is a long shot, top 15 kid in the class, but guess what? He's coming. You have an opportunity. You have the pedigree at the position of offensive line that we talked about. He's definitely going to see himself.
Yep.
He's going to see himself. He's going to see great Hall of Fame offensive linemen on campus. He might rub shoulders with a Zach Martin. He might rub shoulders with a Stanley. He might rub
Yeah.
shoulders with a Quentin Nelson. You never know.
Yeah.
It could be that chance meeting that all of a sudden throws Notre Dame. If they're not the top, maybe they get into the top 3 now. Maybe they have a greater chance.
Maybe they get an official visit out of
Yeah,
him.
maybe they get an official visit out of it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's all you want to do.
Yeah.
You want to try to move the needle as much as you can.
Yep. Yep. Getting to campus is one thing. Getting for multiple visits, that's a completely different animal, right?
Absolutely.
Like that's legitimate. So Josh Petty, we'll see if Notre Dame's able to make any type of traction with him this weekend. Again, there's intrigue, certainly. I just don't think there's enough interest for me to feel great about where Notre Dame is with Josh Petty. But again, we'll see. We'll see where things move coming forward. Okay. We'll see. Sean, we're not going to go through all these players. But just a little teaser for people out there that are at boards.irishbreakdown.com. There are already 8 2026 prominent recruits that are on the visitor list. Okay. And we'll talk more about those guys at the end of the week. I have visit previews already written on 1, 2, 3, 4 of them out of the 8 coming at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So a lot of information coming your way, guys. A lot of information coming your way. So stay tuned. Sign up boards at irishbreakdown.com because we're going to get next, Sean. There is not just visitors this weekend. There's some visitors coming this week to Notre Dame. One very, very intriguing 2025 recruit that will be on campus as well. We're going to get to that next. Make sure the folks like button, subscribe to the podcast, hit that notification bell. Make sure if you're listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, 5-star reviews are always very, very much appreciated. Add it in the comments section. Hey, Ryan and Sean are one of my top 2 duos on Irish Breakdown, or top 1 if you want to say that. It's fine. Just throw it out there. Throw it out there, okay? I just don't, I don't want to ruffle any feathers there, right? So make sure you give a 5-star review, though, folks. We really appreciate it. boards.irishbreakdown.com. We'll check you on the next section here. We're going to visit previews for the rest of the week here on the Notre Dame Recruiting Hour on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Okay. All right, Sean. As I said, Saturday is not the only day that we're going to have recruits on campus for Notre Dame. Okay, it's not the only day. In fact, there are 3 recruits that we were expecting on campus before the blue and gold game. 2 of them are making a multi-day trip to Notre Dame. One of them, Sean, is actually probably going to be here for part of the spring game, but has scheduled a 4-day visit, which we'll talk. I've never heard of a 4-day official visit, but I mean unofficial visit. I've never heard of that before. That is a new one on me. But we'll talk about all those players here. Let's start though chronologically with the 2025 recruits and targets for Notre Dame. Okay, Sean. This one is fascinating, I guess, for the lack of a better word. There's a young man, Sean, out of Louisiana. His name, 2025, Shreveport, Louisiana, Calvary Baptist Academy running back James Simon is coming back to campus, Sean. He's coming back to campus. He was here for USC this past weekend. Okay. Was at USC this past season. Will be on campus on Tuesday and Wednesday. So a multi-day visit, Sean. He had Notre Dame in his top 7 schools, which included a very impressive list. It had Texas, LSU, Texas A&M, amongst a couple others on that list. So pretty prominent offer list and pretty prominent finalist list. Now, Notre Dame, I would say very simply like this, Sean. Notre Dame already has 2 running backs committed in the 2025 class, who we've talked about a lot. Justin Thurman out of Florida and Daniel Anderson out of Arkansas. So running back is not a need, right? Like you don't need another running back if you don't want one. But you've seen the film, Sean. James Simon's pretty good, man. He's a pretty good football player, right? So Notre Dame's still pushing there a little bit. We'll talk about how important this is, Sean. You know, it could be, I guess. But overall, getting a player as good as James Simon back to campus is never a bad thing, man. He's a really, really good football player. Ran for over 1,600 yards last year for Calvary Baptist.
And, ultimately, it's just like the Josh Petty situation. You can't win them all. But if you're going to build the recruiting side of this program up to the level that you want it to be able to compete with the Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, top elite programs, you have to go after these kids and you have to make it a practice that you can get them on campus. You talked about it's one thing to make an offer. You have to get these guys on campus and then get them back for multiple visits and an official visit. That's when you know you're cooking as a staff. And this is a great sign that Dylan McCullough is continuing. We already know, man, the cupboard is not bare at running back for Notre Dame on this roster.
Certainly not.
No.
Certainly not. Yeah.
No. And for him to go after another guy, another stud, and to have the audacity to go in the state of Louisiana and say, yo, I'm not only going to get him and offer him, but get him up here for multiple visits. He's already been here for a game day. Now he comes up for the blue and gold game. Like you said, yo, man, let's bump into, a Hall of Famer in Jerome Bettis. By chance, what type of conversation is that going to be? How is that going to leave an impression on him? How is that going to leave an impression on the people that come with him? Yo, you absolutely. This is why you get kids to campus to see if you can move the needle. A long shot, more than likely, but hey, get in the game, take the shot. You can only make if you take it.
That's 100% true. Yeah. Wayne Gretzky, I think, said that. I think he said something like that one time. But yeah, look, Sean, this is a no risk situation in my opinion by Notre Dame.
Mm-hmm.
If you somehow pull that off and get James Simon, then holy smokes, like that's incredible, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't get him, you still have 2 good running backs in the class. Like it's there's really no risk there. Like either it's not like if I don't get James Simon, I'm in a tough situation. I don't have numbers, right? You're in a good spot if you get James Simon, right? I mean, you're still in a good spot if you don't get James Simon, but you're in a great spot if you get him somehow. Mm-hmm. So Dylan McCullough, great job in this recruitment. Absolutely tremendous. He's a guy that James Simon has continuously talked about. Okay. continuously talked about as far as development and just being a good person and a good man and all those types of things. I actually have a visit preview coming out on James Simon. This should be out probably tonight or tomorrow morning for the next couple days of his visit. He's got some interesting quotes in there, Sean. I think for just kind of some context there, right? Like I think people read it, they're going to be kind of interested in just his perception of Notre Dame. There's a lot riding on this visit, a
Mhm.
lot riding on it. And I'll give it a little sneak peek. If it goes really well and they move the needle, he's going to cut down his list soon, right? It was top 7. It's probably going to get a little bit smaller. If Notre Dame has a great visit with him, they have a chance to be in that smaller group potentially. From there, it's OV season. Okay. Notre Dame, if they're in that smaller group, they're going to get him back for an official visit. You have potentially 2 cracks at James Simon. But in order to get 2 cracks at him, you have to pass this one here. You got to do really well this next 2 days. Again, he's going to be your Tuesday and Wednesday. You need to do well with that and then make that smaller group and get that official visit. Even if that happens perfectly, I still don't think you end up with him. I mean, to be honest, right? But you have no chance of getting him if you don't have a great visit with him this weekend. So, not this weekend, next 2 days. So I'm interested to see how Notre Dame does with James Simon. Regardless, Sean, kid's good, man. Kid's a
Mhm.
really good football player. And I am in the business as a university, as a program, as a coach, to get really talented players to campus. I'm a big advocate of that. I'm a huge advocate of that. Now, Sean, I mentioned this already in the preview. Let's talk about a young man that's about to make a 4-day visit to actually 16, 17, 18, 19, 5-day visit, 5-day visit to Notre Dame. I don't know how long he's going to stay on the 20th. I don't know exactly when he comes in on the 16th, which is Tuesday. But as of today, unless something else has changed, 2026, Richmond, Virginia. I don't know how to pronounce the Huguenot. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm sorry. Someone in the chat that's from Virginia or knows the school, please correct me. But linebacker, Markel Dabney. Okay, Sean, 6'1", 205 pounds, offers from Notre Dame, Tennessee, Arizona, Duke, Kentucky, Maryland, Miami, Ole Miss, Penn State, Pittsburgh, West Virginia, Virginia Tech. Okay. They are going to get their first visit from Markel Dabney. Okay. First visit. And he's going to be staying here from Tuesday until Saturday. Again, I don't know how long he's going to be staying on Saturday. I don't know exactly when he gets on Tuesday, but he's coming from the 16th to the 20th, which is the longest unofficial visit I've ever heard of. Okay. Because again, he's a 2026 kid. So that's a long visit. I've talked to Markel in the past, though. I had a offer recap piece on him when he talked about just what the offer meant to him and his early impressions of Notre Dame. And Notre Dame is one that I think has impressed him a lot early. I'm interested to see how the visit goes. Obviously, I'm interested to see what he's able to what his biggest takeaways from the 5 days are. But overall, and I'll get Sean in here to just get his pulse on this, but 5 days, like what do you do for 5 days? I don't know. Like I know what you do for a 2-day visit, Sean. I know you do it for a 3-day visit. What the heck do you do for 5 days, man? Markel's gonna have some fun though in South Bend. I can guarantee that.
First day you get in, you get settled. Second day you go, you spend time with some players, you spend time with your positional coach at Max Bullock or Bullock, as they've been talking about in the chat, I see, right?
What did they say in the chat? What
The
did they say in
different
the chat?
enunciations and pronunciations of the name Max Bullock.
Gotcha.
And
Gotcha.
and then you find somewhere to really eat, right? And then you catch up with the players on the roster later on that night. Right? You go out to dinner, have a nice dinner, catch up with some of the other players. Then that third day, you probably do like a nice tour of the campus, right? You get the lay of the land, right? And then you meet even more, with coaches and players, and maybe just watch them work out a little bit. And the fourth day, that's when everybody starts to show up, right? So now you experience the weekend, the alumni. You go to the alumni tent, you meet great Hall of Famers and former All Americans. And then if you happen to wake up on the 20th and still want to go to the game, you enjoy that before leaving town. There you go, Brian. That's your 5-day visit right
Broke it
there in
down, man.
South End. There you go.
You broke it down, man. You broke it down. Sean, I just honestly, I just have never heard of that long of an unofficial visit before. I've heard of kids staying 2 days, 3 days. I've never heard of 5 days, man. That's a long time. That's a long, long time. And again, an asterisk there, right? Because maybe he comes in late Tuesday nights, doesn't really get the whole day in Tuesday, and then maybe he leaves Saturday morning. So it's really only 3 days plus parts of 2 others. But 5 days is a long time, man. And Markel Dabney's a very interesting player, though. So I like Notre Dame getting him there. He was actually supposed to visit last week or the week before for like a 2-day visit, Sean, and it got delayed. I think he might be on spring break, which is, I think, why it's a little bit of a longer visits, I believe. If and don't quote me on that one because that
So
could be
now it just
slightly
turns
incorrect.
into a family vacation.
What better place to spend vacation than South Bend, Indiana in April? What better place?
Maybe take a quick trip up to Chicago, do some shopping one of the days.
Get some deep dish.
Well, that is a tourist thing. We don't do.
Hey, man. I'm a fan of deep dish, man. It feels like it's a little bit of a controversial thing, but
every now and then I can get a slice of Giordano's. I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Do my naughties, yeah.
Oh man, people are messing with my pronunciations in the chat. Me too, Sean. They're asking how I spell Water.
Okay, they're messing with your accent. They're messing with your Jersey accent.
Yes, I have the South Jersey thing, so I say water, right? But it's pronounced water. I love my water with no iron in it. Like, I say water weird. Sorry. Okay. All right. Ask me if it's pork roll or Taylor ham next. All right. Let's have these conversations. Let's have all these conversations. Yeah. So, yeah. I like deep dish though. I like deep dish. I appreciate a good deep dish pizza. I do appreciate it. It's not my favorite pizza, but when in Rome, do as the Romans do. Yeah.
Yeah. The Romans don't do that though. That's what people don't understand in Chicago. Like, Chicagoans don't eat deep dish.
All right. Well, here. All right. Before we move on to the next topic, then you tell me, as a, what do you call yourself from Chicago? A Chicagoan?
Chicagoans. Chicagoans.
Chicagoans. Okay. As a Chicagoan.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if someone said, "What do I need to do when I'm in Chicago?" You are the planner of this trip, the trip planner. Yeah. What are the go-tos, man? What's a Chicagoan telling a guy to do?
A Chicago style hot dog.
Okay.
Definitely a dipped Italian beef. Either Portillo's, if you're in Chicago, don't do Portillo's because you can get Portillo's in South Bend. You can get it in California. So it's kind of like a big franchise now. So go to an Al's Italian beef in Chicago. It's very local, family owned. Man, make sure they get you the combo. Make sure you get it dipped, the juices, the sweet peppers. It's going to do you right. Right? Then you go either to the north side or the south side, and you get you a nice thin crust pub tavern style pizza. Man, that's real.
I think someone said that in the chat. I think Ryan Loftus said something about that. Yeah, I think he said that.
There are places all over Chicago that have great thin crust pizza. You don't have to do that touristy, deep dish. No. Venture to the south side or the north side and find you a spot that can give you what we eat in Chicago. Then, of course, look, for me, you have to have a 6-piece from Harold, lemon pepper, mild sauce, hot sauce on the side. It's up to you whether or not you want the sauce on the fries or you want it on the side so you can disperse it how you want to disperse it. You go to Harold's, you get you a 6-piece. There are multiple Harold's in the downtown area, so you won't have to venture to the neighborhoods on the south side for that. You can get that downtown. Man, you might catch an NBA player in there if you go to the downtown location because a lot of NBA players come to town and get their 6-piece from Harold's. If you just want to go ahead and get you a steak, there's some wonderful steakhouses in Chicago. if you want to do a nice dinner with the missus or friends you're in town with, you definitely have to do a nice little steak. And then outside of that, I think that's pretty much, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
That's
All right.
because that's enough for a 5-day visit, right? That's enough. And get you some Garrett's. Go to Garrett's, get you a nice Chicago mix, the caramel cheese mix. Or if you just like your regular cheese popcorn, do that. You
See,
have to do that.
I've seen the caramel cheese popcorn thing before. That sounds weird to me, man. Is that good? It sounds
Well,
weird.
if Chicago owns the recipe, the real recipe. I
Oh, the
can't
real
speak
one.
to
Okay.
how everyone else does it. But if you want it done right, then you
Mm.
definitely go to Garrett's.
Okay. All right. Well, there you
Yeah.
go. Got a little bit of an insight into Chicagoland
That's
from Mr.
it.
Sean
Simple.
Davis. What was that thing, Sean? We had Cam Williams on last year. What was the food that he was talking about that he said was the
Oh, the
thing?
Chicago style hot dog out
Okay.
by his house in the suburbs. Now that's in the suburbs, but Chicago is known for Chicago style hot dogs. But he was talking about that. That's his
Gotcha.
go-to meal when he goes back home. I forget the name of the restaurant. Chicago style hot dog with the hand cut fries. That definitely go to a spot. Al's has hand cut fries. I had Al's yesterday, by the way,
All right.
for
All
dinner.
right. Well,
Yep.
Markel Dabney, if you're listening to this podcast, man, Sean
Yeah.
just hooked you up with everything you need to hit
There you
when
go.
you're in South Bend, and if you want to go into Chicago for a day, there you go. You know everything to get. So
Yep.
I also went to Wrigley last year for the first time. That was my
Oh
first
man,
time at
that's
Wrigley.
absolutely
So
amazing.
yeah, it was good. It
Amazing.
was a good time.
Mhm.
Where does what's the White Sox stadium called? What's their stadium called?
Guaranteed rate field now.
Is it nice or no?
We still call it the cell. It
Hmm.
used to be called US Cellular Field. We still call
Okay.
it the cell. They changed it to guaranteed rate. No one called. I mean, some people call it the rate, but
Okay.
hey, now look,
Hmm.
Wrigley is probably a better experience from a
Okay.
historical standpoint. Like
Hmm.
if you really like baseball,
Hmm.
Wrigley is a better experience. And you
Yeah.
get the neighborhood. The
Yeah.
neighborhood is much better, right? So it's an overall experience.
Yeah.
I won't push back on that as a White Sox fan. But if you're just looking for like a great time
Hmm.
and like great food, you go to guaranteed rate. Because the food at Wrigley is that's all right.
Sorry.
The food at guaranteed rate is phenomenal.
Was it really
Oh, it's
interesting?
phenomenal.
So I forget where we went, but we parked in Chicago. We went out to breakfast or something, and then we walked over to Wrigley afterwards. But I can't remember what we got, but it was good. They had these like huge cinnamon rolls or like
Mhm.
sticky buns. Like they were fire, man. They were
Yeah.
really good. I can't remember the breakfast spot though. Can't remember. Last guy, Sean. So Markel Dabney, when you're coming into town, if you want to go into Chicago, Sean Davis got you, man. He's
Yeah.
got you. Last guy, Sean, that's going to be here on Friday. Don't know if he's going to stick around for Saturday or not, but he is at least going to be here on Friday. Is a player that does not currently hold an offer from Notre Dame, but is a very interesting player. Okay. So this is 2026 Waterloo, Iowa West offensive lineman Carson Nielsen, Sean, 6'7", 275 pounds, rated by On3 as number 105 overall player, number 9 offensive tackle in the class. I would say this about this one, Sean. One, impressive football player. Very impressive. I would not be shocked because what are these visits also for, Sean? It's for the coaches to be able to size these dudes up, right? And to see the body type and to see how they look in person and to be able to talk to them, obviously, from a personal perspective. I would not be shocked that Carson Nielsen has an offer from Notre Dame at some points. I wouldn't be shocked about that at all.
Yeah.
6'7, 275, Iowa kid, really good offer list early. He's got Iowa, Kansas State, Iowa State, Minnesota. If this one move, there we go. Nebraska, Penn State, Missouri, Tennessee, Wisconsin. So a lot of good offensive line schools that have offered Carson Nielsen, who's an Iowa kid already. And so we'll see if Notre Dame's able to move the needle with him on Friday, which is when he's scheduled to visit, and if he does receive an offer from them. Elizabeth Crook, thank you so much. Yes, it was Ann Sathers, I believe is how you pronounce it. I got the breakfast there. So yeah, it was pretty good. It's pretty good. Good breakfast. Thank you so much for that, Elizabeth. Very much appreciated. All right, well, Sean, that's some of the visitors that we're expecting. We're going to get into the 2025 board on the last section of this podcast. So, guys, we're still not done. We're still not done. So don't go anywhere, okay? Don't go anywhere. Make sure, though, like button, subscribe. Make sure that you have the notification bell on the YouTube channel. I should be back regular time this week on IB Nation Sports Talk on Tuesday at 6 o'clock Eastern time. But if you want to know ahead of time, hit that notification bell. If you're listening to me on Apple, on Spotify, or any other major podcast platform, make sure you subscribe to the channel first and foremost. Then make sure you give a 5-star review for your boys, Ryan Roberts, Sean Davis, irishbreakdown.com, and boards.irishbreakdown.com for all the latest recruiting and team intel. Make sure you sign up there. That's going to do it, though, for this section. We'll see you all in a second here on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Sean, with only a couple months left of the 2024 off season, going into the 2024 season, we know that Notre Dame is quickly finalizing the 2025 class. And Notre Dame has a couple kids that are going to be on campus this weekend in the 2025 persuasion. Already have, 19 commitments in the class as well. So things are moving quickly. And we know that for the most part, Notre Dame's class is probably going to be solidified by the time the first game kicks off and Notre Dame heads down to Texas to play Texas A&M, heads down to College Station. So I think that'd be a good time for us to just talk about 2025 board and what's left, Sean. All right. We got to talk about what's left.
Yeah.
Who are the players that you need to know? Who are the players that are still on the board? What positions are the biggest position in need? So we're going to cover that all right now. All right. So we're going to go offense. We're going to go defense. We're going to tell you all what positions are left, what numbers are left, and who are the players that you need to know. Okay. Who are the players as we move forward here. Okay. We move forward. And we also have one super chat, I believe, at the end. We'll get that. If anybody has any super chat questions, please throw them in the chat. Throw them in the chat. We will get to those at the end of this section of the podcast. Okay. So, Sean, let's start here. Offensively. Okay. Offensively. Quarterback. We know who that guy is. Deuce Knight, quarterback, Lucedale, Mississippi, George County. He's not going anywhere. And he is committed to the University of Notre Dame in the 2025 class. That's your quarterback. Running backs. We've mentioned this already. You're good where you are. Okay. You're good. Justin Thurman, Daniel Anderson, you can end that today, and you have your 2 running backs in the class. Notre Dame is still recruiting James Simon, who will be on campus this week. We'll see if anything happens there, but overall, you could be done at running back. Wide receiver is the interesting conversation, and this is where we need to start here, Sean, from the offensive side of the ball. Notre Dame currently has 3 wide receivers committed in the 2025 class. Those are Jerome Bettis Jr. Those are Sean Terry. Those are Elijah Burris. Okay. So as of today, there is a guaranteed 1 spot for Notre Dame. Okay. Guaranteed at wide receiver. But there could be 2 more wide receivers in the class potentially. Okay. Depending on who those 2 are. Let's start with the number 1, though. The guy that we have known has been a priority for Notre Dame for about a year now, right around. That's Derek Meadows. Okay. Las Vegas, Nevada, Bishop Gorman, 6'6", 195 pounds. Shawnee, that's the guy for Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame's in a pretty good spot. They need to close down the stretch. He's received a lot of recruiting momentum this offseason by a lot of Southeastern schools. Washington was high on his list before Kalen DeBoer left. So Notre Dame has been in a pretty good spot with Derek Meadows, but they need to close down the stretch. I think Notre Dame can close down the stretch. I think they probably will close down the stretch. Again, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but that's the guy to start with, Sean. Notre Dame needs to close in Derek Meadows. That is the number 1 priority for them at wide receiver in 2025.
I think watching some of these dominoes fall, like Braden Bynes Bright committing to, to Washington, you start to say, okay, what does that mean for this kid? What does that mean for that kid? I think we're getting to that part of the season where, maybe you can start to read into some of the breadcrumbs. He's coming off an unofficial visit down in Knoxville, and they're probably going to be in contention to the end. You definitely expect the Southeastern schools along with them, like you said, because I still Tennessee is like Midwest to me. It's right underneath Ohio. Did I get that right geographically? I think it's right there underneath Ohio.
Say it one more time. Say it one more time.
No, it's right. It's right next to Kentucky, right? But it's right underneath.
Where are you talking about?
Ohio. Just
Ohio.
geographically.
Yeah, I think so.
Ohio, you hit Kentucky, Tennessee.
Yeah.
So, see, I did pay attention in class. But no,
you were good, man. You were good. Yeah, you got it.
I think I don't know if I get the feeling that I worry about anybody.
Right.
Like, it's going to be a fight.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
Please don't tell Missouri people that they're in the Midwest. They'll fight you.
Do they not think they're in the Midwest? Where do they think they are?
St. Louis people think they are like South. Like literally.
What?
Yes. I went to college with them. They're like, dude, St. Louis is the South. That's the gateway. Like, no, it's a gateway to the West. What are you talking about? Like, they will argue with you all day.
Missouri is absolutely in the Midwest. They're absolutely in the Midwest.
Yeah, I'm just telling you, certain parts of Missouri, you'll get an argument from those people. But no, I think, I don't know if I fear anybody. You know how you like talk to these kids and you're like, oh no, you watch this program for this kid or watch that program. I just think, it's a kid that has all the top programs coming after him. But I just don't get the feeling or the vibe that there's one program that I'm like, man, I'm really worried about that program or that coach or that team. You know what I'm saying? So it's a different vibe. Is that an eerie feeling to have when it comes to Meadows? Because I don't want to be overconfident about the kid, but it does say a lot about how I feel about where Notre Dame stands with him.
Right. Yeah. No,
I think it's a perfect marriage where he knows he's the big fish when it comes to Notre Dame.
Sure.
I think he likes that. And then Notre Dame is probably treating him as such. Like, you're our guy. You're the number one. We believe you're going to be that instant impact guy for us. So, it's going to be very interesting to see how his recruitment plays out.
Yeah. They need him, Sean. I mean, just point blank to me, they need Derek Meadows. They need him. Yeah. You don't have enough guys that look like him, right? You just don't have enough of them, especially in this class. I mean, look, I'm not going to harp on the wide receiver recruiting. We'll see how things end, because there's a reality that if you get Derek Meadows and one of the other guys we're going to talk about in this section, that wide receiver recruit's fine. It's good. Mm-hmm. It's good, right? It's just the ordering of the wide receivers. I think, like, Sean, I'll put it this way. Ready? So I'll give it to you like this. If Notre Dame got, let's say early on in the process, they got Derek Meadows, they got Tanu Hines, right? Bang, bang. Let's say bang, bang really early. And then they fill it out with Sean Terry, Elijah Burris, Jerome Bettis Jr. You feel a lot better about this class, wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. Like, you feel a lot better than it's just about the ordering of how it happened, I think, is where Notre Dame fans are freaking out. And I get it. Trust me. Like, I get it. Because the fear that you have is that you got the depth of the class early. Mm-hmm. And then what if you miss on the front line, guys? I get that. I get that pessimism. But Notre Dame has a chance to close on Derek Meadows. And they have a pretty good chance, I think. And there's just not a lot of guys that are 6'6", 200 pounds, run 4.5 flat, and average 26 yards a catch. Like, not a lot of those guys, man. So, and can jump out of the gym, by the way, and is a legitimate high hurdler, like in the track and fields. So, Derek Meadows, I think, is a must get for Notre Dame for the ceiling. They have a couple guys that have decent floors. They need to get a ceiling guy in a Derek Meadows. The other wide receivers, because there's a chance that they go to 5, Sean, and you already mentioned it. Raiden Vines Bright committed to Washington today, so he is off the board at this point. but there are still 3 wide receivers that I think Notre Dame will continue to recruit, even if they get Derek Meadows. Okay. One is a fan favorite of this channel, Talon Taylor out of Geneva, Illinois community. Okay. Very talented player, potential top 100 player in the class. They also have Tanu Kynes, who I spoke about already, who's Houston, Texas, Decaney. 10, 500-meter kid, very fast, very talented, a competitive dude as well. And then the other guy is who we talked about earlier that's going to be coming this weekend, Sean. It's Javon Boggs out of Cocoa, Florida, right? So you have a chance. You first and foremost, you need to get to Derek Meadows. You need to get him because that is Notre Dame's number one priority, and they've not been shy about that. After that, though, you need to get one of those 3. Tanu Kynes, Javon Boggs, Talon Taylor. You need to get one. You need to get one, in my opinion. Because, and then, Sean, if you end up getting, and I'll say it again, if you end up getting Derek Meadows, we're just going to say Tanu Kynes for this conversation, Tanu Kynes, and then you have the 3-man class that you already have intact, that's a good wide receiver group. I would be okay with that. I would be very okay with that. But you put yourself in the position where you have to land a couple of your top guys on the board now. Like, there's no more, all due respect, but there's no more taking depth pieces the rest of this class. There's no more taking depth. You have to get the frontline guys now. Notre Dame has a chance to close on them. And if they do close on them, I won't say anything about the wide receiver recruiting. I won't say anything anymore until 2026. We'll keep it moving, right? But you have put yourself in the position where you got some of your depth. You need to close on the big time guys or the frontline guys the rest of this class. So that's wide receiver recruiting. Tight end, we know about, right? Tight end is James Flanagan. Don't see Notre Dame taking a second tight end in this class. That's their guy, and it has been their guy for a very long time. So they're set at tight end. They're also set potentially at offensive line, Sean, potentially, right? You have Owen Strebig, you have Will Black, you have Marty Augustine. You only needed 3 offensive linemen in this class, and that's the 3. There is a potential, and we talked about it with the weekend preview. They're still going to recruit Josh Petty out of Georgia. And if Josh Petty wanted to come, they would take Josh Petty. He's a no matter what take. Yes, you can come. You can come. No matter what, you can come, right? So they're going to keep recruiting a guy like a Josh Petty, but they might be done at offensive line. So I would leave it just simply from the offensive side of the class, and then we get into the defense. You have room for 1 to 2 wide receivers, maybe a running back, but probably unlikely. And you might take an offensive lineman if it's an elite player like a Josh Petty. So we're only talking about 2 to 4 players, maybe at most, of addition offensively. But there's a reality where you get 1 more wide receiver or 2 more wide receivers and you're done. So there might only be 1 to 2 spots left in this offensive class. Okay. That's where you are numbers wise. Talked about the players. Defensively, let's get over there because there's some work to be done at several positions here. Okay. And not in a bad way. It's just you got to close on a couple kids.
Yeah.
We talked about defensive line recruiting already, Sean. Let's vent for a second here, I guess, right? You have commitments from Davion Dixon, who committed last blue goal game, by the way. That was a little bit of a surprise early one. You have Davion Dixon. You have Christopher Burgess, who I think is a high upside kid out of Chicago. Simeon, high upside at defensive end. You also have Joseph Reif, who's out of Illinois as well. And then you have Dominic Kulak, who's a linebacker, defensive end, high money backer, like a kind of a hybrid position player. Okay. Sean, there's not really a defensive lineman that's on the board right now for Notre Dame now because we already talked about Javion Campbell's situation. I also dropped some intel on the board earlier, and we kind of already knew this, but it was just verification, is that Damian Shanklin, 2025 defensive end out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Sorry, I was just reading a comment. Indianapolis, Indiana, Warren Central. He is not going to be making his visit to Notre Dame this weekend, Sean. And that's just a recruitment that we probably should just stop talking about at this point. It's just not going in Notre Dame's favor. It appears that Damian is focusing on other schools that we've talked about in the past. So the reality is, guys, is that this might be the defensive line class unless Notre Dame expands. And if they, I don't know, if they have, I think that Notre Dame might have a portal option in the future as far as they might look at some players there. So maybe that's where they supplement the, not hitting numbers on defensive line in 2025. But right now, I think that might be your technical 4-man class for Notre Dame in 2025. I don't know if there's going to be a expansion of the board. I don't know who those players would be if they do expand. just kind of an interesting situation, Sean. Just kind of interesting because obviously you didn't push for Jameon Campbell. You lost traction with Damian Shanklin, excuse me,
Yeah.
and you basically pushed, for lack of a better term, a word, you basically pushed CJ May out of the class, right? So I don't
Huh?
know. Not a huge fan of the defensive line recruiting, but just kind of is what it is. Kind of is what it is at this point. So
And for more on that, go back to the first segment of the show.
right. I was about to say we talked about that a lot in the first segment. So um, yeah, but that's it. That's defensive line recruiting. Let's talk about linebacker, Sean, because we did receive some good news that we'll talk about in this section, right? Shamian Dankin. Some people in the chat are just wild. Chief Brody, what's up, man? Uh, so the good news. You have a commitment from Josiah Kia in the 2025 class at linebacker, play rover, will type of kid. Dominic Kulak, I guess, technically counts as a linebacker, even though he's kind of his own category. He's his own player. Sean, you still have a chance to sign a couple more linebackers here. And it's an elite group that Notre Dame is pushing for. Okay. So as of today, here are the linebackers that Notre Dame is pushing for. They are pushing for Madden Ferriamo, who visited this past weekend, who Notre Dame made a big push for. And I believe that Notre Dame is going to be a high contender for him, maybe the leader, at least a slight leader coming out of the weekend. You also have Noah McHale, who's a little bit of a, not a pipe dream, but I just don't feel great about where Notre Dame is with him right now. You have Nathaniel Wusu Boateng, who you're going to have to play the long game with out of IMG Academy. And then you have Gavin Nix, who I think Notre Dame's actually in a decent spot with Gavin Nix overall. So Notre Dame, though, Sean, if they're able to get 2 out of that group, it's a really good linebacker class, right?
Yeah.
Right now, I feel pretty good about where they are with 1, with Madden Ferriamo. From there, you need to land one of those other 3, right? One of those other 3. If you're able to land one of those other 3, then you're going to have another good, really good linebacker class. But it's going to be about closing down the stretch, man. A lot of possibilities on the board at linebacker still, but they narrowed their focus a little bit, and now you need to close on 2 of these kids. You need to close on 2.
Micro, macro look, they have positioned themselves to be able to have the best class in the Marcus Freeman era from a recruiting standpoint, whether positionally or cumulatively. That's where they stand. That's the position they put themselves in. And now as a staff, they just have to close it out. That's it. Just close it out. It comes down to their ability to close it out. I think ultimately closing is going to be easier for Notre Dame because you're about to get a change, I think, coming up with the early. I think they're gonna be moving the commitment day up to during the summer.
Yeah, for next year.
That early signing period, right?
Yeah. Yep.
That benefits Notre Dame and the way they recruit and the way they have to recruit, right? Because now they don't have to go into the fall trying to win big time recruitments. We'll see how it plays out. But no, this class is all about closing. It's absolutely all about closing.
Yep. And again, they have a chance, I think, to close and have the tremendous class. But you have put yourself in the position where you're working from a smaller board now. And that was by choice. That was Notre Dame's choice to drop a couple linebackers. You know, we talked about, I forgot about Anthony Sacca. They already have Anthony Sacca in the class too. For some reason, it slipped my mind. So you have Anthony Sacca, you have Josiah Key, you still have potential for 2 other linebackers in the class. But you have chosen not to recruit Christian Jones anymore. You've chosen not to recruit Antoine Delorier anymore. Antoine especially was a guy that I thought Notre Dame was in a really good position for if they chose to push for him. So you have narrowed your focus. Could you close on a couple of those kids? That's going to be the question moving forward. Now, the most fun conversation part of this show, Sean, most fun by far, is the secondary class, which we've talked about a little bit already. But let's talk about corner, man. Let's talk about corner. Creed Thomas, already in the class. Notre Dame is pushing for 2 more corners in the class. 3 is the number, but they have the potential to go to 4. Okay, so Dallas Golden, star, cornerback, safety, nickel, running back, wide receiver, whatever the heck he wants to play out of Berkeley Prep in Tampa, Florida. That's pretty much the top guy on their board, along with Mark Zachary out of Indianapolis, Ben Davis. So those are the 2 top targets on the board. But after that, Sean, they're still recruiting Tristan Haynes. They still are recruiting Jameer Joseph out of New Jersey. And I'll say this, Sean, even if, and God forbid, right? God forbid let's say they get Mark Zachary and they miss out on Dallas Golden. If you get one of Tristan Haynes and Jameer Joseph, still a great
I'm
class,
good
man.
with that.
That's still a great class. But if you get Dallas Golden, Mark Zachary, and then one of those two, that is an all-time class.
Yeah.
Generational would be a word that I would throw out there. That is a
Yeah.
generational cornerback class potentially.
Yeah. I totally agree. Absolutely, totally agree. It seems like the wizardry of one's Mike Mickens just continues to get better and continues to grow and what he's able to do and how he's able to relate to these top defensive backs, get them on campus, get them, in tune with Notre Dame, and then develop them once he gets them here. Like there's buzz Saturday as we're watching Christian Gray, there's like buzz amongst the media about Leonard Moore. Like people are like, man, we can't wait to see Leonard Moore get here. It's like,
seriously,
dude, let the kid step on campus and walk into his room and get settled first. But that's something that Mike Mickens has established.
mm-hmm.
That's the work he's put in, and this class could be the best of the best when it comes to that position. I think he's going to close with at least two of the top guys.
I agree. Yeah. Well, Sean, I mean, like, this is how I'd phrase it, right? And tell me if you agree or disagree on this. Mark Zachary, I feel almost at this point, it's a more of a when it happens more than an if it's going to happen. Like, I just think Notre Dame's the clear leader for Mark Zachary now. I think they're the leader for Dallas Golden, but I still think there's a closing that needs to happen there as far as like down the stretch. And then after that, it's again, Jameer Joseph has already set up an official visit to Notre Dame for later this offseason. Tristan Haynes is going to be taking an official visit to Notre Dame unless something changes. So, but I think that out of the top two that we're talking about, Zachary, Golden, I would say I feel great about where they are with Zachary, and I feel really good about where they were with Golden. So it's about closing on Golden and just kind of keep doing what you're doing with Zachary because that has been very successful at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a great relationship with Deuce Knight, by the way, Mark Zachary. I know they play video games together a ton. So, yeah. Who is high? And Jason Smith just said, and so this is an interesting question, Sean, that we have a follow up here. He just said, I think this is very important to this conversation. Who's higher on their board? Tristan Haynes, Jameer Joseph. Jason, from our intel and from our conversations, they would take either of those kids, it sounds like. So I don't think there is necessarily a hierarchy. I would say that they're probably in the same tier, if that makes sense. So I think that if they got Golden and Zachary, let's say, I believe, and I think they would still want to take one of those two kids. I think that they would take Tristan or Jameer, whoever would want to come to Notre Dame. So leave it at that. Okay. I don't necessarily disagree, Brandon, but just kind of where the information's from, right? All right, and last one, safety, Sean. There's only one name to know here, my friends. Only one singular name, okay? You already have Ivan Taylor in the class. You already have Ethan Long in the class. Closing time for Mr. Jadon Blair out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mount Tabor, who, Sean, here's a ready. I'm going to make a statement here. You ready for this statement?
Yeah.
I just want you to react to it. Here's my statement.
Okay.
In the end, on National Signing Day, if Jadon Blair commits to Notre Dame and signs with Notre Dame, I think he could be the top player in this class for me overall.
Wow. That's saying something, Double R.
It's pretty good, man. Because I love Deuce, man. I love Deuce. I like a couple of the offensive linemen. I really like Christopher Burgess. I love Ivan Taylor. Actually, Ivan Taylor defensively could have the biggest fights, in my opinion, between him and Jadon, right? As far as who's the top player.
Yeah.
But I think Jadon's a top 50 player right now, man. I wouldn't be shocked if he's a 5-star eventually. Like, I think he's special, man. I really do. I really think he's special. Yeah. So there's my hot take, I guess, right? That's my statement.
I don't even know if it's really a hot take.
Yeah.
I think it's just a really good evaluation.
Yeah. So that's the last guy on the board. And Archer asked if Golden 247 lists Dallas Golden as a safety. Is Notre Dame recruiting him as a corner? Yes, they are recruiting him as a corner, Archer, but I do think he has some flexibility that depending on how his body develops and all that type of stuff, you could move him around a little bit. But yeah, he is a corner by trade, at least early on at Notre Dame, if he commits to Notre Dame. So, Sean, we had a super chat that we want to get to real quick. What statement? Ryan, turn up the volume. Okay, Ryan Loftus, turn up the volume, man. Jadon Blair, if he commits to Notre Dame, I think that he could be the number one player in the class for Notre Dame overall. That's my statement. That's my hot take. That's my statement. Might need to add a series on Irish Breakdown, Sean, where I just put some I just put some like statements down, right? Some hot takes. Let's get it. Let's do it. I don't know. Maybe we'll think about it. Probably not, but it's in the universe, so maybe it'll happen now. I don't know. Charlie Weiss's last belt loot with the lone super chat of the day. If there's any super chats anybody wants to throw in, please do so. Sean, Charlie says, how many missteps is acceptable until Marcus Freeman steps in and makes the necessary changes needed? The slow walking elite talent is asinine by Al Washington. Great question, but
see, you can say can I be fair? Because I want to be fair. I want to be fair. The foundation of any position or any program, the bloodline is recruiting, right? What if you identify at a certain position that you're going to take your shots and be really selective going after certain kids, because you might figure like the big kids along the defensive line, the top kids may not fit for whatever reason, may not fit Notre Dame. But there are certain kids that we might be able to go after, right? That are already 300 pounds, and we'll be selective. But we're going to be very heavy in development. So if we're going to be very heavy in development, then that means our evaluation goes to a certain type. We already like length, but then it goes to a certain type of kids that might be in the 250, 260 range now that we feel like have the frame and body once we see them to get to where we need them to be. See, we don't know. We're not in the room. And we don't understand, the lessons they've learned from missing out on kids like Justin Scott and other top kids on the interior of the defensive line that might lead them to say, what, we're not going to waste our time.
Right.
And I'm not saying this is what they're saying, but you just, from an NFL standpoint, this, like you have a system that you're fitting players into. And if there are guys that just can't miss at the position that fit in any system, then you go after them and get them. It's kind of apples to oranges because recruiting to like draft and all of that, it's a little bit different, but the board is the board. Evaluation is evaluation. And a certain guy at a certain position, like the two kids, that might be, that's a great example, right? Sweat and Murphy. One might be higher on a certain board for a certain team, and the other one might be higher based upon need and defensive system, right?
Yes.
And where you rank 3 technique versus this defensively. So, from the interior, could it be a point where they value in their defense and what they really want to do? They value edge rushers a little bit more than they possibly value certain things. That's what I'm saying. I wish we could get a clear-cut understanding of what they want, because it would help us understand and properly convey to the fan base, like, this is what we think about this decision and that decision. I'll say this. When you look at Damian Shanklin, when you look at Nate Marshall, you think, there are certain type of kids that they're looking for, along the defensive line, that they kind of, once it gets to a certain point, they'll recruit a kid. And then when they start feeling a certain vibe, you know what? We're going to go ahead and distance ourselves from that. I do think there's enough history there to see, okay, this is something that we're seeing. Hopefully there's enough Chauncey Villano Jr.'s, Davion Dixon's down the road that are off the bat, off the cuff, automatic fits for Notre Dame.
Right.
Whereas we see a change, but I don't know, Double R.
Well, Sean, I would say like this, and it's a little bit of a different situation because these two coaches are in much different places in their career. But we were having a very similar conversation about Al Golden last offseason, were we not? Where it was like, hey, we think
Mm-hmm.
he's a really good coach, or we think he's a good coach at least, but he has to pick up the recruiting game, right? And now we're a year later where it's like, he has help, supports around him, right? To help on the recruiting side. And he's an excellent coach, right? So I think there's a give and take to this conversation, Charlie. And I completely understand the frustration because I do think there were several missteps. Okay. Several missteps in defensive line recruiting. But ultimately, if Al Washington is a really good coach, which I think he showed signs of being a very good coach this past season, I think he got a lot out of that defensive line. But if moving forward, if he's a really good coach and he's making some missteps in recruiting, I think it's a situation where you understand that and give added supports, or you go about the process a little bit differently and you try
Mm-hmm.
to figure it out. Because at the end of the day, Sean, you need good developers and good coaches, man. I can supplement things to help on the recruiting side. That's why you have a recruiting department. That's why you have other coaches. It's hard to supplement being a good coach or not. I mean, that's tough, man. That's really tough. So I think there just might need to be some ports that are put in, Charlie. If he was failing at both, like if he was an underwhelming coach and an underwhelming recruiter, then
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, dude, like, what are we doing? Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing here? This doesn't even make any sense. But he did a good job at coaching last year, man. He really did. So I think there's maybe some supports that need to kind of be put in place if it doesn't get better. But clearly there's a little bit of a flaw in defensive line recruiting that needs to get fixed. I would leave it at that for now. Thank you, though, so much for the super chat, Charlie. It's very much appreciated. And folks, that's going to do it for us for today. Thank you so much before you leave for joining the show today. And also before you leave, hit that notification bell. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. We will be back very, very soon. Tomorrow, Brian will, I'm sure, will have his solo show, and then I'll be on at 6:00 for IB Nation Sports Talk with Sean Stiers. We'll probably be talking a little bit about the NFL draft that's coming up in 9 days from today. 9 days from today. Maybe we'll talk about a little recruiting as well. But thank you all so much for joining the show. That's Sean Davis. If you haven't checked out the Lucky Lefty podcast, make sure to go over to YouTube or search it on all of your favorite podcast platforms. And you can also search it on Twitter as well. I know they have a handle on there also. 5-star reviews over there. We appreciate you guys. Have a great day, and we'll check you next time on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.